All right, guys, we're back for week 11 of the head coach episode. I'm here with Yanni. What's up, dude?
What is up, buddy?
Dude, I just took some of the worst Monday night fantasy L's I've ever taken.
Yeah.
One matchup, I needed under 15 points from Josh Jacobs. He was under the entire game. It was a gross defensive battle, and Josh Jacobs gets in the end zone like maybe with 4 minutes left to go in the game. I lose that one. Then he fumbles later, makes it even closer, so I lost by 1 point. Then in another one, I had AJ Brown, obviously, and the other guy had Jordan Love and Devontae Smith. And I needed AJ Brown to not get outscored by Jordan Love and Devontae Smith by 20 points, and I won. Um, Obviously, we have the AJ Brown dud, the Jordan Love dud. Devontae Smith gets the long touchdown, but I'm still winning. With 30 seconds left in the game, Nick Sirianni goes for it on fourth down, throws the ball to A.J. Brown. It gets deflected. So the
Yep.
Packers take over. And then Jordan Love does that 25-yard pass before they miss the field goal. I lose on that too by point 0.5. But I'm just
Yeah.
taking beatings
Well,
all year on
well, you,
Monday night. It's the worst year of like Monday night luck I've ever had. I forgot what it feels like to like get good luck on Monday night and win a game. It's crazy.
well, you didn't tell the whole story either. You have the most points scored in that league. You probably have the best team in that league after I've been very injured, but you probably have the best team in that
Oh,
league.
after I've
And
been
you
very
would have
injured with the fucking caveat. Okay, buddy.
and you would have been in first place. If you had won that game, which I think you lost by point 0.5, right? Or point
Yep,
0.7.
point 0.5.
Okay. Point 0.5 on, so whatever that is, like 16 passing yards, 13 passing yards, you would have been first place with first points scored. And I still think you're going to get a bye there. It's just like that's a pretty big swing, dude. On 15 passing yards, 16 passing yards to get a zero from your second round pick, and for that to be the reason you're not the one seed. When really I think you've probably played the best this year in terms of like trading, managing your roster. Yeah, dude, that's a big that one's not because I was not aware of it until you made me aware of it. And then I started following your game because I didn't have any to follow. And yeah, that was just killer. When I saw him complete that pass, I thought, no way. And
I was
then
I was hoping that he would throw a Hail Mary at the end that got
that
intercepted, but then they trotted out Brandon McManus, who by the way is 3 of 9 on field goals outside of the red zone. So I don't know why they thought
yeah,
he was going to make a 65-yarder.
yeah.
But anyways, on to the show. Enough of me complaining about my shitty teams. Only two teams on bye this week. We have Jonathan Taylor, Danny Dimes, and the Colts. Fantasy wagon all year. If you guys have buys, you're going to be feeling it this week on that team. And the New Orleans Saints, who really have no one except for Chris Olave, so it kind of balances out now, doesn't it? Let's get into Thursday night. I'll do this one because that team that's not first place has a lot of fantasy bags on this one. And we got Justin Fields, I would assume, in the New York Jets going to New England to play the 8-2 Patriots. What a wagon, man. The Jets have an implied team total of 15.5 points, and the Patriots have an implied team total of 28 points here. For the Jets, we're going to start Brees Hall. We're going to sit Justin Fields here, much to Yanni's chagrin. And we're going to tricky decision Mason Taylor, who effectively should be the wide receiver one this week for the Jets, I would imagine.
Mhm.
Then for the Patriots, it's pretty simple. We're starting Drake May. Trevion Henderson is going to be in the start column. More on that in a second. Stephon Diggs, we're going to start him as well. Then we're going to tricky decision the other wide receivers, specifically Kyle Williams and Pop Douglas. That's going to be who's going to be available this week because Booty and Ramondre have been ruled out. And then Hunter Henry is a tricky decision as well. And we'll start with the Jets because this is a very simple conversation, right? Last week, Justin Fields, another game under 100 total passing yards. The offense does not work. Garrett Wilson has now re-injured his knee and he's going to be out for the next 3 weeks. So the Jets' game plan is effectively let's turn around, hand the ball to Brees Hall as much as we possibly can because he's our best player, and see how far that gets us and not ask Justin Fields to pass until later. So we're going to start Brees Hall here. I will just put a little asterisk on this though. The Patriots are the best team in the league against the run. So stylistically a horrible matchup, but Brees has been so good these past couple weeks that I feel like you can't not start him, but I'm expecting RB2 numbers this week from him, or maybe even lower. Like it's a sketchy start, but it's like a start, right? Justin
Yep.
Fields, I don't even know if he's a cupcake crusher anymore. Earlier in the year, after his good couple weeks and then his struggles, we said, you know what, you can start him against the bad defenses, don't start him against the good defenses, and that's where we're at with that. He looks so bad to me. I don't even know if you start him against the bad defenses anymore. Patriots are on a bad defense though. They're playing pretty well. Under no circumstances should you start Justin Fields with Garrett Wilson out and this situation around him. And then Mason Taylor. It's just We're picking through the trash here, looking for any sort of value. If Justin Fields passes the ball, it has to go to someone. And Mason Taylor, I guess, is the most consistent passing option. Even then, he's still kind of in a tight end rotation. He separated himself a little bit, is like the best tight end, I guess, in that rotation. But he's more of like a desperation flex to me than like a locked and loaded starter. It just feels like sometimes when guys are missing, you can like do replacement theory where it's like, oh, okay, well, these targets go here and it will be the same, or that person will do better. I don't think there is replacement theory for Justin Fields' passing game and Garrett Wilson being gone, but Mason Taylor's been good at points this year. I think he's worthy of tricky decision. For the Patriots, really the Jets defense, what started the year as potentially a good one is now a cupcake now that they've traded away Sauce Gardner and Quinn Williams. So they're just totally punting on the season. Drake May, right now, the fantasy quarterback one. In total points, he's not there in points per game because he hasn't had his bye yet, but he's an elite start here. Full confidence. I feel like unless the Patriots blow out the Jets and they really get established their running game, it feels like so much of the Patriots like scoring equity ends up landing in Drake May's little bucket. So I like him here. He's like a top 3 or 4 play for me this week, even with Mahomes back. I really like the spot. Trevion Henderson, we finally got the breakout last week. Ramondre has been ruled out. Terrell Jennings is questionable with a knee. It sounds like he's going to be like a game time decision, right? Verbatim, Mike Vrabel said he wants to feed Henderson a heavy load this week. Phrasing, I guess, but I think this is a perfectly acceptable spot for Trevion Henderson here. If you need him, fire him up. You spent a 4th round pick on him. If you were patient, you kept him on your roster, on your bench, waiting. This is about as good of an opportunity as it's going to be. I'm just going to warn fantasy managers, right? When Ramondre comes back, I would not be shocked if Trevion Henderson's usage goes back to what it was before Ramondre got injured. But in this spot, I like him. Diggs has just been the most consistent wide receiver on the Patriots. A lot of times these guys are popping up or we're trying to. It's like whack-a-mole almost. Like one guy pops up one week, the other guy pops up the other week. Diggs, at least, even if he's not the wide receiver one on the team for that particular week, has still been like startable. He's like totally flexible, right? And if he has the week where he's the primary guy, I think he has a good one here. Sauce is gone, so he's not going to be on him. He's like a flex to wide receiver two start for me this week. I think it's totally fine. The other wide receivers, it's just if you're interested in trying to whack the mole with the mallet or whatever, right? It's going to be Pop Douglas and Kyle Williams. I feel like Kyle Williams' usage still isn't going to be great. He had the long touchdown against the Buccaneers last weekend, but that was mostly just catching a like crossing route and being one of the fastest guys in the NFL. Pop Douglas is more like those long shots that Drake May takes. I think Drake May is going to hit on a couple of those. Whether or not it's Kyle Williams or Pop Douglas, I'm not sure, but I think both are fine for desperation flex consideration. Then Hunter Henry, tricky decision. He's not been in double digit points since week 5. So like the kind of the tight end one Hunter Henry season is over. I don't know though. It feels like if the Patriots route them here and Drake May has a MVP caliber performance against a subpar defense, that Hunter Henry is live, especially in the red zone to get in the paint. To me, he's like a tight end 2 to absolute desperation flex, or I guess play for this week, right? If you have who went down at tight end. Like if you're a Dalton Kincaid roster, for example, and you just need a body and you weren't able to get Dawson Knox, I think you can do Hunter Henry here. I see him on waivers in a lot of leagues. I don't think he's a must add or anything, but if you need to, you could, and I don't think he'll goose for you. What do you think, man? A lot of talking for a not very interesting game, I'd imagine.
Yeah, not a whole lot to say. I pulled it up while you were talking. So he did have the 240-yard game against the Bengals, but it's the Bengals. 3 of Justin Fields' last 4 games have gone for 54 yards, 46 yards, and 45 yards through the air. That's really bad. He's like a borderline not roster guy to me. I think you do have to keep rostering him just because when they get a good matchup, he'll at least run enough that you have a shot at something that week. And the waiver wire is pretty bad for quarterback this year with all the injuries. But yeah, bad. Bad, bad, bad. Okay, Skins at the Dolphins. Skins with an implied team total at 22.5. Dolphins with an implied team total at 25. Mariota looked all right last week. I guess they're giving him a little bit of respect, but um, I don't know. I don't know. 22.5 on the road for this current outfit that they are rocking. But look, for the Skins, Mariota, I think like he's a perfectly and against soft defenses, like he runs enough. I think you can probably keep trotting him out there and he's going to get you production. I like in the free Tendies fantasy league cluster in 12 leagues, I've seen him starting in almost every single one. So he's a pretty popular streamer, and I think for good reason. Like he's fine. I started him this year in a must start for Lamar the week before Lamar was back when he was rolled out at the last minute. Look, I think it's fine. I don't know if it's amazing, but in this matchup, I do like him. Where I think it's like interesting is as a sneaky like DFS quarterback for your roster because he's going to be a lot cheaper. But yeah, so we have Mariota as a start. Debo got the touchdown last week. He was on his way to a dud week. I really needed him to too. I was in a death match where had I won, I would have been first place in the league that me and Ted were discussing earlier, or at least tied for first, I think. I might have been a few points back, but I did not. And part of the reason was Debo got the last minute touchdown, salvaged his day. He's just getting such good usage around the goal line where they're designing plays for him. I have a hard time telling you guys to sit him. He is like below half of his average points per game from the first 5 weeks to the last 5 weeks. He's really dropped off in the middle of the year. To me, I attribute that more so to the overall health of the offense and offensive like environment that he's in, less so that like Debo's fallen off or gotten injured. I know that happened a few times in San Francisco, but he didn't get pneumonia. He didn't have some major injury. I just think like the offense is sort of declining, but I would still be flexing Debo and I would do so again this week. And then Chris Rodriguez, the name team captain last week, got 100% of the carries before he got a shoulder injury. Similar thing, it sounds like, to what happened with Aaron Jones, where they couldn't rule out the fracture definitively, so they just didn't put him back in there until he could go get x-rays. Apparently, did you say he was taken off the injury report today, Ted?
Yeah, he's off the injury report.
So off the injury report, I think their plan is to start him because Bill has looked really, really bad, really, really bad since like week 2 or 3. So against this defense, I love his odds to get in the end zone this week. I love him for DFS. I would go ahead and start him with actually a degree of confidence. Like if he's on your waiver wires and you need a flex, I would go grab Chris Rodriguez. And then sitting Bill Jakrowski Merritt kills me because I like Bill. Bill is a really fun story, really fun player, and I think he's looked really good at times this year. He just hasn't looked good as of late. He's like below 3 yards a carry. Just looks really unreliable. And then in the red zone, they've been pulling him for Rodriguez. In passing downs, they pull him for McNichols. He's just sort of getting this weird yard-eating role from the 20 to 20 with Jaden Daniels in there was maybe kind of interesting. It's just not now, to be honest with you. Like I have a roster that is decimated at running back. It has lost Scattaboo, Trey Benson, and Omarion Hampton, and I am not starting Bill Jakrowski Merritt there. I am opting for Nick Chubb at Tennessee over him this week. Then for the Dolphins, A-Chain, your running back 3 on the year, just came off one of the 3 best or 4 best running back performances of the year. Locked and loaded, must start. I expect him to go absolutely off this week. It is the Skins. They're a very loose defense. We just saw what Jahmyr Gibbs and the Lions did to him. They're giving him even more run lately, just sort of leaning on him to win them games. He's getting like bell cow usage in both the pass and rush game. I don't know. Does it hold up? I'm not sure, but it seems like it seems like McDaniel isn't getting fired. It seems like Tua isn't getting benched, and he has one of the best schedules for running back rest of season. So he's probably just going to be a start, unless something changes. Waddle's been awesome, dude. This was a guy I was picking my shots at, and like he was going like round 6, an underdog, sometimes even round 7, but usually round 6. I felt like that's pretty good value. Picking my shots there. My rosters with Waddle are doing pretty well, and I've noticed most of the rosters in the redraft leagues are doing pretty well. Again, this is a soft matchup. I think Waddle's a great start this week. I mean, that's not really a hot take. Everyone does. The hotter take is I think you can stream Tua. I don't know if you really need to stream quarterbacks this week. I would probably in this matchup specifically still prefer Mariota, but like as far as if you're in 2 QB leagues and you need someone off the wire that can start, or you have a 3 quarterback rotation, like I think Tua is a great start here. It's such an easy matchup. I think they should be forced to pass enough. You can roll Tua with confidence at home. And then Dulcich. Dulcich is just kind of a sketchy volume play. To me, when we say he's a sort of tricky decision here, what this means is like if you guys want to build a Tua Dulcich stack for DFS, I think that's a great move. I really do. If you want to go with a sneaky captain, do a single game DFS play, and you want to captain Dulcich, I actually don't hate it at all. But I don't think in redraft anyone's going to seriously look at starting him with only 2 buys. I know with Jalen Warren out or Tyler Warren out and Juwan Johnson, who have actually both been pretty rock solid starters, Jalen or Warren all year, Johnson as of late. I know that some people are going to be looking for tight end, but I think you could do better than Dulcich. But for DFS, I don't mind throwing him in there as like a $2,500 play at tight end.
Well, you won some money, Ross, doing DFS with Greg Dulcich this year, didn't you?
I did. I did. I rolled Grant. Yeah, it was just a double up. But yes, I did double my money rolling Greg Dulcich in DFS this year. It was the first week he was out there.
Yeah, man.
Or
I mean for the Dolphins.
yeah,
I've been kind of mean to them all year. I've been fading what they're doing all year. Fact of the matter is, though, it seems like McDaniel is not going to get fired, right? I thought for sure, just based on the way the season was going, right, the low lights we've seen from Miami, that it was either Tua was going to be out or McDaniel was going to be out, and it was going to fuck
yeah,
up like the way that offense operates, right? It looks like we're getting the best possible rollout here with some of the wins they've been able to accumulate. Granted, against not great competition, but they're still winning, right? And it looks like the players are playing for McDaniel. So I think that the scam that we've built, or I guess you guys have built, because I had none of these guys, with Achan and Waddle, right? I think it's going to hold out, like barring Tua injury, because I just don't think Tua gets benched at this point, right? So barring injury, I think that they're fine now. So if you were willing to take the risk on that, right? If you were willing to take the risk on Waddle in the sixth round, given that Tyreek Hill was there, you were willing to take the risk on HM. I think you made it out of the woods. I think you made it to the other side. It's a good play. All right, this one. This will be fun because I have heavy fantasy bags on this game, and also I feel like I got a lot to say about these quarterbacks here. We got Caleb Williams in the Chicago Bears going to Minnesota to play nine in the Minnesota Vikings. JJ McCarthy has dubbed himself Nine. That's his alter ego when he goes out on the field. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to call him that now. You got it, JJ. For the Bears, we're going to start Rome Odunze here, assuming he goes. We're going to start Colston Loveland, and we're going to start DeAndre Swift. We're going to sit Kyle Manungai and DJ Moore, and we're going to tricky decision Caleb. And for the Vikings, we're gonna start nine here. The noise has been pretty loud about JJ. I'm willing to give him a shot here though against the Chicago Bears secondary. We're going to start Justin Jefferson, one of the most Twitter clipped players of last week. More on that in a second here. Then we're going to start Aaron Jones, who the de facto running back one for the Minnesota Vikings. It looks like if you listen to the show 3 weeks ago when we put Aaron Jones as a buy high, specific or buy low, specifically Yanni did. You're already making a profit on that. We're going to sit Jordan Mason and T.J. Hawkinson, and then we're going to tricky decision Jordan Addison. And let's start with our Vikings first. It the entire story of this season, and I think what we have to decide in this game is what we're going to get out of JJ McCarthy, right? That's just nothing matters other than that to me. And once you figure out what you want to do with that, then you can kind of put the pieces in the puzzle. So basically, where I'm at with it is I don't think he's playing well enough. Just like Carson Wentz wasn't playing well enough, I think the Vikings all year have not gotten good enough play out of their quarterback position. The reason he's a start this week and the reason we kind of fit the puzzle pieces together like we did is that the Bears are missing, like, I believe 3 or 4 members of their secondary. They're extremely banged up. They're kind of like the budget Bengals now. Chicago has been. So they're in these really high scoring games where fantasy options are scoring a lot of points. So this is not a JJ McCarthy is here and a great start the rest of the year play. It is a try to abuse a soft matchup play. He's a low end quarterback one to high end quarterback two for me, but I think it's at least doable this week. Justin Jefferson, last week he had 12 targets and I think he had 5.8 half PPR fantasy points. It was his lowest total of the year. He looked pissed during the game on one of the picks JJ McCarthy threw. Justin Jefferson just watched it happen and didn't chase the guy down to tackle him. Like my read on his body language was he was like, "Fuck this! I'm not chasing that guy. This sucks." Right? So clearly he's frustrated. But the Vikings are making an attempt to get him the ball. He had the 12 targets last week. Jordan Addison also had 11. So they're making a concerted effort. I guess Nine and Kevin O'Connell are making a concerted effort to get JJ the ball, but it's just not hitting right now. JJ McCarthy is missing a lot of throws. Justin Jefferson's kind of maybe not catching some balls that he should be catching. I have no concern whatsoever about the quality of Justin Jefferson. It's more so what we can get out of JJ McCarthy and if it will be good enough to sustain a wide receiver one season, rest of season. I don't know if he's. I think it's borderline between a 1 and a 2 for me for rest of season. But this is the Chicago Bears. We like the matchup. He's a great player, as long as the ball is catchable, he's gonna do good, boys. We're gonna start him here. Then Aaron Jones, I was talking about it a little bit earlier, right? Like he's outscored Jordan Mason in every single game JJ McCarthy has played. He's definitely preferred on the passing downs. It looks like he's starting to be preferred on the rushing downs as well. It is just mostly Aaron Jones is your starter. Jordan Mason is your handcuff. Jordan Mason experiment's over. I think he's a great running back too on a roster. Like for the Niners, he was a great running back too, but he was never like a bell cow. And that's just kind of how we're going to call it for now until further notice. Then Hawkinson and Addison. Hawkinson, we're calling a sit. Jordan Addison, we're calling a tricky decision. And I mean, I'll go back to my pie analogy, right? The fact of the matter is the pie is so much smaller with JJ McCarthy. I don't think in his first like three starts, I think he passed for like 150 yards, 120 yards. Then I think against the Ravens, where they were trailing all game, like he dropped back 42 times for like 220 yards. The issue is the passing game when it's not working, right? You have these other like secondary options in the offense, and they're just not producing, right? If Justin Jefferson's not producing, TJ Hawkinson isn't about to pop off, right? If Justin Jefferson isn't producing, then I don't think Jordan Addison's about to significantly outscore him, right? We had the weird game from Jalen Naylor, but I think that's just more of an anomaly than anything else. So it's a tricky decision for Addison because he's a talented guy. He's been good for the majority of the year, but we just want to warn you, like with Nyan out there, I just don't know how good it's going to be for him. And then Hawkinson, he just hasn't been good most of the year. We're not chasing those points until we see better quarterback play. For the Bears, Roma Dunze, I feel like it's self-explanatory. He had a nice bounce back week. He got the touchdown. He popped up on the injury report this week. I'm not that worried about it though. It seems like very clear that he's the acting as the alpha wide receiver, the X wide receiver in the offense. The Vikings have been playing better as of late, but I'm not going to sit Roma Dunze here. For me, he's like a wide receiver too. And I think that's fine. I think that you'd be happy with a wide receiver too. Result from like your eighth round or seventh round pick wherever he was going, right? Colston Loveland, mini breakout for him. I don't know if he's all the way here. He had 7.8 half PPR points last week. He had the big game against the Bengals the week before with 25. Listen, when rookies start getting more usage, we want to try and like get that in our lineups, and especially when tight end is so thin, right? Like I feel like you can start him here. He's like a low end tight end one, but I think he's startable. Then Swift and Monangai are next. We're calling DeAndre Swift to start and Kyle Monangai a sit. There was some consternation in the fantasy community about which one of these guys was the back to own. Last week against the Giants, there were the Monangai managers. You could tell who they were on Twitter telling you that Monangai was coming for DeAndre Swift's chain. I think it's very funny with DeAndre Swift. It's like people have been wanting this guy to be out of a job and out of the backfield and not a factor since like week one, basically. But all DeAndre Swift did was come back, average like 6 yards a carry, and take like 60% of the work last week. Monangai will be involved in this offense. I think that the post by rookie bump has been good to Kyle Monangai. I think they're like a budget Gibbs and Monty, but when Swift is getting all the passing work and he's getting the majority of the rushing work, like if you're starting Monangai, you're hoping he falls in the end zone, like on less opportunity. I'm not sure if I'd be interested against a Vikings defense that has been playing better the last 2 weeks. DJ Moore, he goosed last week, like total goose. He's been like playing through injury. It feels like Roman Dunes has kind of taken over as the wide receiver one in the offense. He just kind of feels like a talented guy who's just doesn't really have a role in the offense, right? I'm not telling you to start him with confidence here. I think he's more of a sit than even a flex or tricky decision. That's why he's in that column. I don't know. I wouldn't drop DJ Moore. I wouldn't do anything rash like that because I think he's too good. He needs to be rostered, but I'm not picking this week to start him if I can avoid it. Then Caleb Williams, tricky decision. He's had a couple good performances in a row. I had one team that lost to the Josh Jacobs roster. If I had started Caleb instead of Herbert, I win last week. You know, I don't. I feel like because I've seen so much of this, I don't want to pound my fist on the table and say that he's improving. I feel like I'm seeing good things the past 2 weeks, though. I think it's on the board that if he could keep it up the rest of the season. He could improve. We've just seen these weird spike weeks and down weeks from Caleb his entire career. So it's like, what do we do with it? I think he's been good for the past 2 weeks, so you can consider him as a tricky decision. But I think he's a high risk quarterback if you're gonna, especially in a single quarterback league against a team in the Vikings that held a Lamar under 20 points, right? It's risky, but I don't know. I've seen good things from Caleb. If you believe that he can kind of start to string these things together, get some of these near misses to hit, if you like the spot for a Dunze and the pass catchers, I think you could do it. To me, he's like a low end quarterback one, but I'll at least grant him maybe this week. What do you think, man? A lot to say there, but I feel like it's a pretty interesting game, all things considered.
Yeah, man, you're good. Sorry, but so just real quick, I'd slid off to the side for a minute and looked out my sliding door while you were talking. Just full blown like domestic dispute between some dude and his girlfriend. Car sped off in the driveway. Everyone got to see a look at the stacked boxes of a trading card business behind me. It's gonna be on YouTube forever. So what do I think about this game, dude? I love this game. Like from an NFL storyline perspective, oh man, right? 6-3. The 6-3 Bears have to try to beat their division opponent on the road. To me, this is like a really big, a drop your huggies game for the Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson experiment, right? Like, can they go in against Brian Flores and a pretty sound defense and a really pretty, in theory, a good offense? They're not running very well right now, but the pieces are there. To me, I would consider this like a major feather in the cap of this current regime for the Bears if they can pull it out. Am I eagerly starting Caleb Williams in fantasy? No, I only have one roster with him, which I just traded for Jalen Hurts on. So, like, obviously, no. But I think he's like a perfectly fine. If you need to start him, I just would look for other options here this week. Yeah, I'm trying to think of anything else. The Vikings are top 10 in points allowed to tight end, so I do think Loveland's a start. Just a fun storyline that Ted's been ribbing me about all year, and rightfully so. But we'll see if there's a development in it this week. Ben Johnson was asked outright, do you notice that Burden is outplaying DJ Moore and Olamide Zaccheaus so much? Like that was something along the lines of like, what do you think of his play compared to the guys that are getting more routes than him? And Ben said, I think he's earned much. I think he's earned more usage. I think we need to look at that. And I think you're right in saying he's earned more usage. So again, like I know I've told you guys a few times this year and it hasn't come through. Dude, that schedule is so good for these wide receivers in the end of the year. Luther Burden right now is behind Puka Nacua and JSN in yards per route run. That's it. That is it. And fantasy points per route run, or fantasy points per route run. He's right there with those two guys. Like he is on a per route basis, he has been one of the most fantasy productive receivers in the sport. He's just not running a lot of routes. So if you guys have room before this week, please go stash Luther Burden if you can. Again, this is strictly for rosters. You're 7-2, or you're 8-2, you're 7-3, you're 6-4. You think you're almost locked in to make the playoffs. And at the end, if some guy pops, it might really push you over. I'm just going to keep harping at it, and I'm going to let Ted's going to keep making fun of me, and he should make fun of me, and that's fine. I really believe in the player, and we finally got Ben Johnson to directly address it. And like his running mates don't look good to me. Zaccheaus does not look like he's doing well to me. DJ Moore does not look like he's doing well to me. Burden had like a sick play last week. He's been all over social media. I don't know, man. One last plea to please stash Luther Burden for a week or two and see what happens.
I mean, the idea that Luther Burden is better than DJ Moore is a little crazy to me. I think that maybe with DJ Moore's health or whatever, right, in his role in the offense, like you could say that Luther Burden has been playing better in the opportunity he's been given, right? I think Luther Burden certainly should be running more routes than Olamide Zaccheaus. I don't understand
Yeah.
why that's a thing. So yeah, I agree. Like totally rosterable, I think, and he should be available in a lot of leagues, but I don't
Yeah,
know.
I don't know if it's going to go anywhere. It is just my little spiel that I've given a couple times this year. Uh
Oh, you get
okay.
this one, lucky duck.
Nice. Packers at the Giants, at my second team, the Giants, that are starting one of my favorite players in the whole history of my time watching the NFL in Jameis Winston. Packers with an implied team total of 25.75, going up to MetLife Stadium with an implied team total of 18.75 for the Giants. We'll get the Giants out of the way real quick because they're kind of a boring conversation. The only guy we're comfortably starting here is Theo Johnson. I believe he's had like around 11 or 12 points the last 2 weeks in half PPR. He's actually been like a high-end tight end one in half PPR scoring. He to me looks like their most consistent passing option. What does Mike Kafka want to do with the passing game? We don't really know. A longtime NFL player. He's been in their system for years. He's been groomed by the Mara family. The belief around the league is that this is someone who's getting, this isn't a rare situation where an interim coach is getting a genuine tryout to maybe like take the position. So like, and he seems like a really competent guy from what I could tell from what people were talking about this week. He's a pretty well respected like offensive mind. So we'll see. We'll see what Kafka does, right? I mean, I don't know if he's been with Dayball. I don't know how long he's been with Dayball, but he's come up through like the Belichick and the McDermott tree, and then under Dayball for years. Like he's got a pretty high coaching pedigree. So I'm expecting the offense to look decent. We usually see the post coach firing bump, and then we know that Jameis is going to sling the ball around. So I think Theo Johnson, especially, like, he's still on some waivers. He probably shouldn't be, but like especially for you Tyler Warren rosters, I know Tyler Warren has been our little safety blanket all year. It's been so nice to you just look at him in your tight end spot and you feel good about it. And like all of a sudden this week I'm scrambling to stream guys. I know it's stressful. I think you could feel great if Theo Johnson is your tight end for the week. He's probably my favorite streamer. If he's on waivers, I don't know how many competitive leagues he's going to be on waivers in. We are going to sit Jameis here though. We love our boy. We're looking forward to the quotes. My all-time favorite quote about Jameis is he calls plays in the huddle like he has a surprise to tell everyone. I have such a clear image in my head of the expression on his face and the tone when he's doing it. It makes me happy. I think we're going to get some awesome quotes. I don't know how awesome the play is going to be. The Packers just held they just held Jalen Hurts to 11.8, whatever it was, 11.7 points. And that's Jalen Hurts throwing to A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Saquon Barkley, and Dallas Goedert. It's just really hard. This is a weapons-deprived team. They fired Dayball at a tricky time because this is going to be Kafka's first time out there. It's a tall task. It's a tall task. So we are going to set Jameis. Your sort of tricky decisions, Wandale. The Packers have been gettable through the air. This is going to be a pass-happy game script. Again, probably more of a DFS thing for me, but I actually don't hate Wandale Robinson at all this week. Again, we know what Jameis is willing to. Jameis is willing to drop back and sling it 48 times a game with no regard for anything. The ball will be going downfield somewhere. And he's the F it, someone's down there somewhere kind of thing. And look, it should be really fun. I'm looking forward to it. I with only 2 buys in 12 team, like 1 flex, I would hope you could do better than Wandale, but I also don't think you're screwed if you have to roll him out there, especially like in 2 flex, 14 team. I think you can go ahead and start him, but that's what a sort of tricky decision is. He's on the board, right? He's on the borderline. For the Packers, your starts, Jordan Love has been actually pretty good in games with easy matchups. He's been pretty terrible in games with bad matchups. He's got a pretty good matchup this week. I would start him with confidence against the Giants. I know that's a pretty weird thing to say, starting Jordan Love with confidence, because he's been so shaky at times this year, but that's kind of how I'm going to play it moving forward. I don't think you should drop him. I saw him dropped in a few leagues. He still gets Chicago twice down the road here. He has like some nice cushy matchups, especially towards the back half of the season or towards the playoffs. Like I think he needs to be rostered, and I think you do need to start him in matchups like this one. I would not be starting him in matchups that are difficult or that he might have to think in. And then Josh Jacobs, awesome. Just an awesome running back, man. He's like pushing for top 5 here at this point.
11 touchdowns on the year, by the way.
Yeah.
Scored a touchdown in every single game except for 1.
Just the paragon of consistency. And this has been while he's been nursing a calf injury. Like he's been playing at less than 100%. They've been spelling him a little bit more than I think they normally would, and he's still producing like that. Just a really impressive, fundamentally sound running back. He's like, Ted was talking about it during the game, where maybe he's not like a Jahmyr Gibbs, or Ted wouldn't use this language, I would, a Devon Achane that can, break a long run and really impact the game on one run. That's not necessarily his bag, but it's more just like this brutal pounding. It's just this consistent, and then he gets a good yards per carry. So it's like a consistent, 5-yard chunk, 7-yard chunk, 11-yard chunk, 12-yard chunk. And by the end of the game, dude, defenses look tired. He's running into him. Now the Eagles held up to it, but not enough so that they didn't give up 19 points to him. Really good pick, man. If you guys were not afraid of the volume, if you were not afraid of the regression, if you went in at that 1-2 turn and got Josh Jacobs, you feel great about it. Romeo Dobbs. One of my by far most rostered players, an underdog. That has been awesome this year. He's been awesome this year. Awesome in spot starts. I do not want to start him when I'm a little sketched out about the competition. I'm not with the Giants. I would go ahead and start him here. I believe he's going. He left the game injured last week, but I don't think he has the questionable tag. He may still be questionable today. It sounded like he was going from what the team said. Doesn't look like Jaden Reed is back yet, but please still be stashing Jaden Reed. Go out and get him, guys. I like he might Jaden Reed, there's a chance that he just slides into 1-for-1 with the production that Tucker Kraft was doing for this offense. I think we're live here for it. So make sure he's rostered, but he's not back yet. Musgrave, speaking of the ghost of Tucker Kraft, sit Luke Musgrave, not a great player. Just that's it. Not a great football player. It was little butterfingers last week. I noticed he was getting destroyed on run blocking. Ugh, it is not a 1-for-1 thing. When you get Tucker Kraft was playing like a young George Kittle this year. I don't want to give him that much credit. He was not on George Kittle's level, but he was playing very much like a young George Kittle. That is not what Luke Musgrave is. And then sort of tricky decision is Christian Watson. I actually don't hate it if you want to roll Watson this week. He's like closer to a start for me. I just I feel like they're going to be so run heavy because the Giants hemorrhage rush yards on the ground so much. I don't think the Giants are going to push them to have to keep passing the ball. But like he's dominating the team in air yard share. He seems to be the guy that him and Dobbs seem to sort of be like loves guys out there. If the target share drops off from Musgrave, I expect that to keep pushing outward. When Reed gets back, when Golden gets back, we maybe need to have a more in-depth conversation about that, but not yet. Again, I would hope like Watson should be your wide receiver 5 on your rosters. He should be a guy you went through and added on waivers as a wide receiver 5. I hope you guys aren't at the point where like you have to start him, but if you do, I don't think it's an emergency.
All right, so hot take for me. The resident Jordan Love hater who won the pick'em last week, picking against the Packers, picked the Eagles on the gambling show. That hit, obviously, so I'm not a fan of Jordan Love, the player, whatsoever. That being said, though, for fantasy, I think you really need to pick your spots with Jordan Love. I
Yeah.
think this is a huge Jordan Love game because the noise has been so loud, right? That people are talking about how LaFleur is potentially on the hot seat, how Jordan Love's not good enough. To me, against a team that I feel like lost their heart and soul with Jackson Dart, this feels like the Packers bully them, get their like they. I think they're going to treat this as like a get right game for their passing attack, right? So I love the Watson start more than the Dobbs start this week. And that's simply because Dobbs has the injury, right? And Christian Watson, he's getting way more opportunity than I thought. So I'm urging you guys, if you can get Jordan Love in your roster, in your starting lineup, and it's not like a ridiculous decision, please get him in there. I think that this is a great game. And then for the Giants, I know we didn't put him on the slides. If Darius Slayton plays, where would you have him this week?
He,
Because kind of like
he,
the fuck it, someone's open downfield Jameis strategy,
right.
I feel like would be good for Slayton, right?
So the reason I didn't put him in the slide, he re-popped up today with the hamstring. So he had the hamstring before the game, injured the hamstring in the game, came back and got one catch, and then just re-injured it midweek this week. So it's like
Uh,
I agree in theory, but there's just no way. There's no way it's safe. So I have an interesting one for you. I have a roster. It's actually got a lot of ceiling on it. It's a Egbuka, Rashi Rice, George Pickens roster with Jameer Gibbs at running back. So it's like got a really nice ceiling. I was toiling between starting JJ McCarthy and Jordan Love, and I
Jordan Love,
was
it's
gonna
not close for me.
so I was gonna lean JJ there. That's interesting. I don't. Yeah. Okay.
Could
Yeah.
be wrong. I've been wrong before. I don't claim to
Yeah. Well.
be
Yeah.
the I don't
Oh,
I'm not the oracle of the Packers, but this to me feels like the
yeah.
get right spot for him. It feels like what was it? The week they tied the Cowboys, right? Like I sat Dak for him that week because I had this feeling that Jordan Love was going to pop off. Like I don't know. Maybe it's like the Raiders radar thing. I don't know. I think that it's a good week from Jordan Love, and people have amnesia about this week and think he's elite again. Then we have the same conversation in 2 weeks when he busts
Nice.
against a real team. All right. NFC South showdown. We got my second team, the Carolina Panthers, fall to 5-5 with the loss last week against the Saints. Going to Atlanta to play the Falcons, who are also struggling, but they're like winning, they're losing close games. So both of these teams just aren't playing well. The Panthers have an implied team total of 18.5 points, and the Falcons have an implied team total of 22 points. For the Panthers, their only starts for you are Tet and Rico Dowdle. Notice that Bryce Young is not even on the chart here. I feel like we're back to rookie season Bryce Young, we're under no circumstances. Not in the best matchup, not in the worst matchup. This Falcons defense, I think they're playing decently. They have been gotten in the air a little bit, but no thank you. We're not starting Bryce Young. Then for the Falcons, it's pretty much a lot of the same from last week. We're going to start Bijan Robinson here. We're going to start Drake London. We're going to start Kyle Pitts. Then we're going to sit Michael Penix, Darnell Mooney, and we didn't put him on the slides. What do you think about an Algier spot here, Yanni? Is this your Algier spot?
That's weird. Why didn't we put him on there? They called him an all-star or a superstar this week.
I think he's tricky
Yeah,
decision.
he's a sort of tricky to no. I mean, honestly, like if you guys need a spot, if you're a hero RB roster, he should be your RB2 this week. Like if you're doing the rotation at RB2, or if you need a flex play, he's absolutely live to be a good flex play this week. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think so. And let's start with the Falcons first because we're just talking about it, right? Tyler Algier, he's kind of been stealing Bijan's goal line work. So Bijan managers have not been happy lately, but Bijan, he's still a great player. He's still getting the passing work. He's still effective when he runs the ball. It's just that for whatever reason the Falcons are electing to punch it in with Tyler Algier and give him anywhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 12 carries. You're still starting Bijan here against a Panthers defense that has just been giving up yards on the ground. There was like this weird period of time where people were like, did the Panthers fix their rush defense? They did not fix their rush defense. Big Bijan spot here. I think he probably has a much better week for you Bijan managers. And then Algier in potentially garbage time. I think he's live to fall in the end zone too. Drake London, one of Yanni's favorite players. A lot of times I shit on Yanni's favorite players in the off season, and I kind of make fun of him for being a little too excited about a player. And do you remember what I said in the off season about Drake London, Yanni? I said I see the vision, but last year he just wasn't. He has never been that elite wide receiver one where he's going right. Now we have over the last 4 weeks, he has been the wide receiver one in fantasy 3 out of those 4 weeks, and he's doing that with Michael Penix being objectively terrible at the quarterback
Yeah.
position. They're really, it feels to me like what they're doing is they're doing the Puka stuff with Drake London. You made that analogy, I think, last week. I think it's really good. Like Drake London is a monster body. He's a giant guy. And the Falcons are realizing, hey, like we can just throw it to this guy 15 times a game and he's going to move the chains pretty consistently here. To me, because there is so much variance with what Michael Penix will give you on a weekly basis, I think like Drake London is like an elite wide receiver two to low end wide receiver one. I prefer him in my wide receiver two spot because like he just has this upside for wide receiver one on the week, right? And if he has a bust week or whatever, then he's your wide receiver two. But I think he's in that top 10 conversation at least. Maybe I'm a little bit lower on him in the market, but I think the lowest you can have this guy is like 12, 13, something like that. Love the spot here against the Panthers. He's getting the J.C. Horn matchup. I don't care. He's a much better player than J.C. Horn. Then Kyle Pitts. We've said this before. Like he's producing. He's getting more looks. It's been better with Michael Penix for Kyle Pitts in his life than Kirk Cousins or Desmond Ridder or any other quarterback they've had. But that results in like anywhere from the neighborhood of 5 to 9 fantasy points per game for the tight end spot. He's a start because the tight end spot sucks, right? And it feels like the volume and like the targets, like he's getting consistent work is the main thing, right? Do I think he pops off here and is the tight end one overall in the week? No, but I think that if you need 6 or 7 points from your tight end, he's a pretty safe bet to get there. Then for the sits, Michael Penix, I've just seen enough from him that until morale improves, until he has a good game, I'm not putting him in my starting lineup. I think if you dropped him, I would not blame you. It's still, I think my own quarterback evaluation jury is still out on this player. I don't want to notarize any take yet, but to me, he's looking more like it's not going to work than it is going to work. Good news is he's playing the Carolina Panthers, who are not a good team, not a good defense. He has an opportunity, but until he shows us not subpar play, I'd say leave him parked on your bench. And then Darnell Mooney, he just has not gotten good enough quarterback play to sustain him as a secondary option, right? Like they're funneling more work to Drake London, which they probably should because he's by far the best player on the team. The passing game hasn't been good, so there's not really much room for Darnell Mooney to do anything. I think he's a fine speculative wide receiver 5 on your roster in case, Michael Penix starts playing better near the stretch run, but until then I'm not forcing him in the lineup in what is a pretty good matchup here against the Carolina Panthers. And then for the Panthers, it's very simple, right? Tet McMillan, I don't think he's the player that we were all really excited about or were drafting or that his usage indicates, right? That like really he is everything for the passing game for the Carolina Panthers. Like guys like Jalen Coker, guys like Jatavion Sanders, guys like Jimmy Horn, they have no shot at being fantasy relevant, right? Ted is such a good player and is getting such high value targets that he has a shot. But the issue is the quarterback play has been so terrible. The Panthers have just become this super aggressively run heavy team with Rico Dowdle, and I feel like it's to hide what Bryce is doing. It feels like regression from the back half of last year. I feel like this is probably the end of the road for Bryce Young. I think there's next year I'll be depending on what the Panthers do at quarterback, I'll be really in on Tat McMillan. But to me, he's like a start is a flex play, just because the quarterback play isn't good enough. But he's still startable, right? He's not going to bust for you on any given week. And then Rico Dowdle, one of my most annoyed at players of the fantasy season. My Chuba shares are in the toilet because of Rico Dowdle. Like I said, the Panthers have just gone 10 toes down on we are an aggressive run the ball football team, and all of that is going to Rico Dowdle. We saw the yards per carry drop drastically last year. I was getting kind of excited. I thought the Linsanity run might be over and Chuba might get some more work. Then since Rico wasn't averaging like 5 or 6 yards a carry, didn't happen. The Panthers are rolling with him the rest of the way. He DNP'd on Wednesday. It was the same quad he DNP'd for last week. Dave Canales called it rest then. I'm assuming it's rest now. I think Rico's a fine RB2 this week, and if for whatever reason Rico Dowdle misses, then you can start Chuba Hubbard, and I think he'd be pretty similar to what Rico will give you in this game. What do you think, man? Was that a good Drake London analysis there? I feel like that you might have been
Yeah, I
happy about
mean,
that.
yeah, I mean, he's not top five. You just can't get into the top five with the names that are there. And personally, I think Egbuka has to be up there too. So it's like, he's somewhere. I would have him like 6 or 7, but yeah, you just can't. There's a certain range of guys that because of their quarterback play or their offensive environment being so much healthier, you just can't bump him above. And then yeah, obviously, like just because he was my guy this season, the Tet thing. I was actually pulling it up, the fantasy data points, fantasy points, Trinity score for wide receivers, which are the 3 most predictive metrics for a receiver. I don't actually know them off the top of my head. Ted Aroa is 6th this year. He is, in terms of the predictive usage that would indicate a top 5 wide receiver season, there are only 5 wide receivers in the NFL getting better usage than him. It just doesn't matter because again, I do think, look, they have 2 or 3 linemen out for the year. They had, 2 or 3 lineman injuries in the last month. I think those guys have all come back at this point. Like their O line's decimated, but I also think ultimately Bryce has regressed really severely. We've been seeing the worst version of Bryce Young this year. And it's just a bummer, man, because like I really thought that usage, like I thought Ted had a chance at top 10, but I thought he would be like a locked in top 15 guy, and now he's more like a top 25 guy. So it just is what it is. I did not do a good enough job of praising A, Bryce's propensity for regression. B, I don't know. I don't know. I feel like it's kind of a cop out to say the O line got injured, but I do think that really matters. I don't know. Next year, if they get their 2 or 3 linemen, like if they get Hunt back, the guy that got hurt week 1, like if they get all those guys back and they go get like Mac Jones, if Mac Jones is throwing to Tedero McMillan behind the 3 linemen they paid for that were a top 10 pass blocking O line the first 2 weeks, if that happens, yeah, I'll be right back in. But if it's Bryce Young again, dude, ugh, I don't know. I just don't know
Oh yeah,
what to
dude,
make of it.
I'm so aggressively in if it's not Bryce Young. Like Ted's doing everything that he needs to do, and it's just the most important guy that's tied to him in terms of scoring fantasy points is just bad.
Okay, Chargers at Jags, actually like a pretty important game for the LA Chargers. You know what? It was mind blowing. Who were the 2 teams? They've lost to the Giants and the Skins this year. Those and the Dolphins, right? Those are or no, they didn't cover versus the Dolphins. They beat the Dolphins, but they've lost to the Giants and the Skins this year. This team has a shot. Like they probably should have, in theory, had the best record in the NFL this year, which is absolutely mind-boggling to me. What a great job Jim Harbaugh's done, losing 2 offensive tackles, losing his left guard. I don't even know what's his name, the Giant Becton. I don't even know what the fuck Becton's doing. He keeps coming in and out of the lineup. He keeps getting sick. He keeps dropping out of games mid-game. Like, dude, the job that Jim Harbaugh's done to hold this thing together with duct tape and chewed gum has just been amazing. They have a 23.25 implied team total going to Jacksonville with a 20.25 implied team total. If the line stays at 3, it almost certainly will be on my bets this week. For the Chargers, I saw the funny trend about every other week. I think it's even. It's either even or odd week Vidal. Vidal's been going off every other week for like 90 and a touchdown or 23 yards. I don't know why that is. I'm not really worried about it. I am starting him here, and I am starting Herbert. I'm toiling over a decision. This is the only matchup of 2 8-2 teams across all 12 free Tendies rosters for probably who gets control of the 1 seed. I am in a match with this dude, and I am debating rolling Herbert over Lamar Jackson this week. So like that's what kind of heater Herbert's been on. I know he cooled off a little bit last week, but he was the QB1 from week 4 or 5 till last week. So he's been doing that well. I think this is that good of a start that I'm actually debating, do I roll him over Lamar Jackson? And I know I'm rostering 2 quarterbacks with an elite quarterback. It's stupid. When Lamar went down, he hit waivers. I dropped 30% of my fab on Herbert to stream for Lamar. And now I can't just let him go back on the wire to some dude's team and then it erases my quarterback advantage, you know? So I've been like holding him and trying to trade him, but I might make use of him this week. I don't know. The jury's very much out. Like I'm debating, do I start Herbert over Lamar? Because Cleveland's just a tough matchup, you know? And then Ladd McConkey, just been on fire, dude. He has been a mid-range to back-end wide receiver 1 since week 4. We wavered for 1 week. 1 week we dared to put Ladd as a sort of tricky decision and QJ as a start. Outside of that, we have always had it that Ladd is a fundamentally different fantasy asset than these guys. He is again this week. And then Gadsden. I know Gadsden has a quad bruise. I'm not really worried about a bruise cutting down on his playtime. Ted rosters him, so I'll let Ted weigh in on his opinion. Like I would start him with full confidence here. It's a great matchup. Should be nice weather. Like I'm not worried.
Off
And
the
then
injury
Allen,
report, he's fine.
yeah, like it was a bruise. It wasn't like a tendon concern or something, you know. And then Allen and QJ. Look, I saw people saying some wild shit about QJ earlier this season. Like I'm talking like there were people saying to trade Ladd McConkey for him. There were people saying that he's probably a top 15 wide receiver rest of season to trade for him. We did not tell you guys to do that. To me, it's like both of these guys in different ways. They get there in different ways, but both of these guys are guys that you're like, thank God I roster them as my wide receiver 4 or 5, because when I plug them in my flex spot, they're live to go for 15 points. They might get you 4 or 5, but they're live to go for 15. And at this point in the year, when you're stacking up injuries and when you're stacking up buys, it's actually worth a lot to me to not have to go to my waiver wire to stream someone or to not have to plug in a handcuff running back in the starting role in my lineup, you know? So like I that's what those guys are to me. I think this game should be high scoring enough. 43.5 isn't a great over under, but like I think the Chargers have been passing enough, especially behind that line. I think you could flex either one. I wouldn't be excited about it though, to be very honest with you. And then for the Jags, our starts are going to be ETN and Parker Washington. Sit is going to be Trevor Lawrence, sort of tricky decision, Jacoby Myers. ETN has gotten premium wide receiver 1 usage coming out of the bye. I thought there was a chance because of the way Bucky took over for White coming out of the bye last year under Cohen, that's what would happen this year. That is not the case. It turns out when they evaluated things in the bye, they decided ETN is their bell cow. He's been getting, 16, 20 plus touches per game, all the work inside the 5-yard line or most of it. To me, he is startable as a high-end running back 2 with running back 1 upside every week at this point. And I don't think that's going to change. I think you're just rolling him out there. I would have him fixed in your lineup. If you got him late enough in drafts and your roster hasn't been absolutely decimated by multiple running back 1 injuries, you should only be flexing him. That's fantastic. For some of us, we have been decimated by multiple running back 1 injuries. He's our RB2. Fine. I have no qualms about it. Like I feel great with ETN in my starting lineup for the rest of the season. Parker Washington popped up today with a hamstring injury. That is unfortunate because he's been leading the team in targets and usage. I know Jacoby Myers led them in receiving yards last week, but Parker Washington got the touchdown plus a return touchdown. I think his returning upside's real. He has like 3 of them this year, I think. I like Parker Washington a lot as a player. Like I saw him get dropped a lot after last week. Like people treated him as a streamer for a week. I don't think so. I think he should be rostered on your lineup. I prefer to start him over Myers here. But with the hamstring injury, it's a little weird. If he misses, Myers is a must start. Myers is a must start. The Chargers have been giving up yards. The game script should be ripe for it. I would get Myers, and it doesn't look like Brenton Strange is back this week. And so yeah, that Myers is a sort of tricky decision. If not to me, just an emergency flex. Like I would prefer Allen or QJ over him. That's kind of the range he's at, like wide receiver 30, 35, somewhere like that. And then Trevor Lawrence is a sit. I don't know. If you feel like the passing volume's there, fine, but I think you could do a lot better. There's only two teams on bye. Ted can talk about his decision with him. I think he's making the right call there. Like I would be starting Joe Flacco over him. I would be starting not Michael Penix, certainly, but like, oh my God, JJ McCarthy, not close. Jordan Love, not close.
Aaron
There's just
Rodgers,
sort of,
not close.
yeah, like well, I was going to let you say that. I said my choice. Yeah, Aaron Rodgers, not close. So to me, it's like that's what a sit is. Then that's what a sit is. It's not a tricky decision. You're not toiling over whether or not he needs to get in your lineup. He's just probably not that startable of a fantasy asset in anything but soft matchups.
Yeah, I think I'm way lower on the Jags passing game in this spot than you are, right? Because we saw what the Chargers did to the Steelers on Sunday night. Like that, the Chargers beat the crap out of Pittsburgh, man. Like,
Yeah,
and with everyone down, right? Parker Washington, he did okay against the Texans, but now he has the hamstring, right? Jacoby Myers just hasn't been getting full run. I feel like Trevor needs guys like Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter when he was actually running routes, right, in the game. And you're
yeah,
asking, like, this game is asking him to elevate not very good pass catchers against a defense that just like destroyed Aaron Rodgers and was knocking him all around. It feels like a really bad spot to me. But I get what you're saying about Parker Washington, right? Because he's been getting a ton of volume. Like he was my streamer last week when I had T Higgins on by, and he got me 16. I
yep,
was happy about it. Then for the Chargers, I don't really have much to say on this. Like I feel like Keenan Allen, he's only a tricky decision because of how easy this matchup is. His usage has notably dropped, though. He had the one game against the Colts where he had 11 targets for some reason, but he's kind of been. We're kind of getting the pecking order, right? That we've been talking about, and I think Glad is getting more usage, and he clearly should, right? QJ, on the other hand, I feel like his usage, he's getting decent looks, but like he's starting to get those drops again. We're starting to see the QJ hands we've seen for like the majority of his career. So I almost prefer QJ to Keenan Allen rest of season because like the usage and like the targets he's getting are more high value, but he's still QJ, man. I feel like this wasn't actually a breakout and he just had like a couple week stretch, but I don't know. I'm not the QJ crystal ball guy. It's just my take on it. All right, we have the rematch of the Thursday night game. We have the Bengals going to Pittsburgh to play the Steelers. The Bengals have an implied team total of 22 points, and the Steelers have an implied team total of 27.5 points. We don't have any sits or tricky decisions for you. All of the fantasy relevant guys are starts. It's Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Chase Brown, and Joe Flacco. Roll them out full confidence. For the Steelers, there are less relevant fantasy guys, but the ones that are, we want them in this matchup. That is Aaron Rodgers, Jalen Warren, and DK Metcalf. And I'll start with the Steelers first because I feel like they got some stink on them after the performance last week against the Chargers. I think what happened is Jesse Minter's defense finally got a little bit more healthy. And Aaron just missed a couple throws. That was one of the worst games I've ever seen Aaron play, right? So I don't know, like, kind of what my prognosis is on him rest of season. But what I do know, though, is this Bengals defensive matchup it doesn't get better than this, like from a fantasy perspective, right? They're the only team in the last month to allow more than 100 passing yards to Justin Fields. Justin Fields had a great game against the Bengals. If there's one thing about the Cincinnati Bengals that we know, it's that they're going to score a lot of points and they're going to allow a lot of points. And to me, the Steelers, even though Jalen Warren's been playing pretty well, it feels like they're still kind of like a primarily passing team, oddly enough. So I'm going to start Aaron here is a especially super flex option. I love the spot this week. I think if you're desperate, you have Danny Dimes on bye or something, right? I think Aaron is a totally acceptable replacement here. I think he's live to get anywhere in the neighborhood of 20 to 24 points. Jalen Warren, another start for us. This is a player that I feel like I got completely wrong. My off-season take on this player and what's been on the field was completely wrong. I was of the opinion he was too small. He wasn't an every down back. I was a Caleb Johnson guy in the offseason. I thought it was going to be Caleb Johnson's job. But really, to me, when I see Jalen Warren, he's running really, really well. Like on Sunday night when they were playing the Chargers, I thought he was the best player on the field for the Steelers, and I was like, why are they taking him off the field now? He only got 42% of the snaps in that game. And this week, when Mike Tomlin was asked about Jalen Warren, because like I think a reporter asked him like, "Hey, like Jalen Warren was looking pretty good. Like, why isn't he getting more work?" And what Mike Tomlin said is he said, "When we have more success on third down, Jalen Warren's going to be on the field more." Well, that translates to me is he is the primary running back in the offense, right? And what they're doing is they're just saying, Kenny Gainwell, you can be the third down guy. So against a defense like the Bengals that's allowed multiple 200-yard rushers on the season, I feel like the Steelers are going to be in scoring position a lot of times on the 1 yard line. That's Jalen Warren time. I think he's live. We might have our first 20-pointer of the year. I think from Jalen Warren, especially with how he's been running. I got to give the guy respect, man. I think he's a much better player than I gave him credit for a lot of his career. And then DK Metcalf, same thing, right? He had an absolute turd on Sunday night. I've seen managers trading away DK, like doing the like what is that sell low, right? There was one league where a manager traded DK Metcalf for Terry McLaurin. I'm not sure I would advise that, but listen, man, I he's clearly the number one pass catcher for the Steelers. Nobody, Rowan Wilson is not moving the needle. Calvin Austin is not moving the needle. This is DK's show at the wide receiver spot because they didn't trade for anyone. I feel like he's live for potentially a 20-point game here. I really like the spot for DK. Don't get scared off. Please start him with full confidence. Then for the Bengals, I just feel like this is going to be the same until we get a change in quarterback, right? Joe Flacco, in the games that he's played since he's taken over as the Bengals starter, quarterback one, fantasy points per game. He understood the assignment. The assignment is to just assault Jamar Chase and T. Higgins with targets, and he's been doing that. So I know the Steelers played better last week. They did a pretty good job on the Chargers wide receivers, but this is Chase and Higgins, man. This is a different animal. That I think that was like the Jamar Chase like 28 target game or whatever. I'm interested to see if the Steelers change up their game plan here, but Chase is an elite wide receiver one. I think T. Higgins is finally back on that wide receiver two or very comfortable flex map. Glad to see that from him after the start of the year. And then Chase Brown, he's been like, I think he's averaging like 5 or 6 yards a carry his last two contests with Joe Flacco out there. Granted, they've been playing some soft defenses like, you know, they played like the Bears. They had a good one there. Chase Brown had a good game against the Steelers too the last time they played. So I don't know. Chase Brown is RB twoable to flexible to me. He's not like the ceiling case that we were drafting in the offseason, but I think he's totally startable here in this spot. What do you think, man?
Not a whole lot. And I don't think it really matters what they do against Jamar Chase. I think they're like fundamentally undermanned to cover him. Maybe it's an interesting difference from the last game is they moved Jalen Ramsey to safety. So like I don't know because Jalen Ramsey was too old and slow to be a corner, and we've seen a lot of the time when that happens, they turn into pretty elite safeties when you slide him back there. Does that maybe help with some of the Jamar Chase usage? Maybe, but I don't think so. I don't think they can do anything to stop him. Okay, really excited for this one. Pretty big game actually, because all of a sudden the Bucks find themselves taking a little bit of a beating lately. I wouldn't say like a skid necessarily, but I don't know. I don't know. That offense has looked kind of funky. Kind of funky. It doesn't look like Bucky's coming back this week, so they've got to dig it out without him one more week. Chris Godwin out. Saw an interesting report today that suggested Mike Evans might be back by week like 13, 14. That's kind of cool. But no one's coming right now. No reinforcements right now. The Buccaneers with an implied team total of 21, going to the Bills with an implied team total of 26.5. I feel like this is pretty straightforward for our starts and sits here. For the Buccaneers, Baker and Igbuka. I know that Baker had again a couple dud weeks or down weeks, but then he had a nice bounce back last week. I just think in general, like this is a QB1. You would have had to have done a fantastic job drafting quarterbacks like our very own Theodore, who gets to choose between Ted and Drake May, right? If you do that, great, you can choose. But like for most folks, I just think like you start Baker Mayfield and you're happy. They're gonna have to pass a lot here. It's a good game. Emeka Egbuka, to me, he's like a top five guy rest of season. Maybe that's being too bullish. I think at worst he's like wide receiver 7 if you want to be really stringent about it. He's just looked that good. The volume's been that good. He's the last man standing. Like I think his 2 down games were because he was playing at less than 100% through a hamstring. So that's really all there is to say there. Cade Otton, premium tight end 1 usage last week, and full PPR he went off for you, and half PPR he did pretty well. He's a starter. He's a starter until Godwin or Evans gets back, and even then, like I think until they're both back, if they're even both back, I think you're still starting him. We sort of put RB question mark here as the last start. So personally, for me, Tucker has looked better than Rachaad White the last week or two, and I would not be surprised to see them give Tucker more work than Rachaad White without Bucky Irving in this week. Okay, I have a few rosters that are so banged up. I do need an emergency start. I'm emergency starting Sean Tucker off the waiver as my flex play because I think he's got a chance to score a touchdown this week. Rachaad White just looked terrible running the football. I think he holds on to the 3rd down role though, so I think he's still a start. Still a start even without the rushing work, just because they're probably going to be trailing a lot. I think he's live to catch 5, 6, 7 catches even, but like 5 or 6 probably. So I do like them both here, but I prefer Sean Tucker if you're choosing between the two. And then your sort of tricky decision is going to be Tez Johnson, who's actually been playing tremendous ball lately. Like, kid looks like he might be a player, man. Whatever the Buccaneers have going in their wide receiver like department, their talent scouting department at wide receiver, it is like reminiscent of the Steelers a few years back. Just like to me, it seems like they are finding early round, mid round, late round, just banger after banger after banger. You know, McMillan was a damn good receiver last year. If he wasn't hurt this year, he'd probably be in there going off. It looks like they found another one in Tez Johnson. This is probably more for a DFS thing. I don't hate it at all though. With the game script, I think the usage is going to be there, but he's a sort of tricky decision for us this week. For the Bills, our only sit is going to be now and forever Keon Coleman. Keon Coleman is officially done being a fantasy relevant player. Now, forever, always done. Don't ever start him. I don't care what the situation is. You can find someone better. I would much rather start Sean Tucker over him. I would rather start Cade Otton in my flex over him. I would rather start Tez Johnson over him. I would rather start Dawson Knox, who is a start for us this week for the Bills. Dawson Knox with Kincaid out. I think he's like a must-start tight end. I really do. He has a rapport with Josh Allen. He's had tight end 1 production with Josh Allen for many years now. With Kincaid out, with how heavily they're using tight end in the red zone, I like it. I like it a lot. He is a start. Shakir is a start. Shakir is just like kind of a locked-in start for me as a flex play. I look again. Some of you guys killed your draft. Some of you guys did a fantastic job, and you can't fit Shakir in your lineup. That's great. That's a great problem to have. But for most people, like put him in there in your flex and feel great about it. He has 15, 17 point upside with like a nice 8 to 11 point floor, probably closer to like 10 to 11 point floor. I love Shakir. I love him in this matchup too. This is a premium matchup for their pass catchers, except for Keon Coleman, who's not a good football player. It's a premium matchup for the other 2 pass catchers who are reasonable football players. And then your other 2, you're locked and loaded. Your constants on this roster are Josh Allen and James Cook. I know James Cook has not been the super premium running back 1 that he was in the beginning of the year. I think their offense is just working something out. That's what it's looked like to me. It's just looked like there's this weird clunkiness in their operation. Josh Allen, I think, has played some of the worst ball of his like recent 3 or 4 years, like in the last 3 or 4 games. I just think that happens. I think he's trying to do a little bit too much. I do wonder at some point if they sort of rediscover the run game with Cook. To me, it's looked like this offense is functioning best when Cook is a bell cow. And I don't say that as a Cook investor in fantasy, although certainly it helps me in fantasy. It's just how it looks like their offense works best. He looks like their most effective offensive weapon besides Kincaid, but Kincaid's going to be out for a couple weeks. So I just wonder if at some point they kind of go back to really rolling out like the Cook heavy game plan here. You're starting both of them though, obviously. And you feel great about both of them in your lineup. I feel great about both of them rest of season. These are premium fantasy assets.
Oh, dude, I love the James Cook spot here. The Buccaneers have been
Yeah.
getting gashed by the speedy guys when they run away from Vita Vea, right? Jameer
Yeah.
Gibbs had his game of the season against this Buccaneers team. Trevion Henderson had the
Yeah.
breakout against the Buccaneers. It's those fast guys when you're not running directly at the snowplow, right? And you can actually get some room. Like there is room to break off runs. James Cook has elite speed, elite wiggle. I really love the start for him this week, especially with a struggling Bills offense, right? Then my really only other note on this is, did you see Josh Allen's like post game interview where the reporters were asking like, yeah, like, do you think Keon Coleman's doing good enough? And like Josh Allen looked like he was the most done with the season I've ever seen him. He goes, well, he got one this week, so he did fine, right? It looks like Josh Allen is done too. It looks like the Bills, they had an offer from Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins wanted their first round pick next year, and the Bills would not budge because they were willing to pay a first in 2027. So that's how close they were to having Jalen Waddle on this roster, and they didn't do it. And I wonder if that costs the Bills another shot at a Super Bowl, right? Because I don't think this iteration of the Bills team can make a run. Like, obviously, Josh can do Superman stuff, but you're going to ask him to do that. But now it's looking like probably 3 games in a row because I don't think the Bills win the division anymore. Feels like a missed opportunity for me. It sucks given like Josh Allen's in the peak of his powers and James Cook is like, really emerging as an elite player, but we will
Dude,
see.
they didn't even need to go expensive with Waddle. You could have given him Calvin Ridley or Jacoby Myers. I think would have made a fundamental difference to their outlook this year. But
It's one of the things we said, right? We said it before the trade deadline. We think the Bills are getting someone. We think the Bills are getting someone. There's a reason
shocking.
why. Like, yeah, they must just have that much faith in Josh Allen to be able to will the team to a win at any given point in time. And I feel like, it's a roster build mistake, but never count them out. All right. This is one of the matchups of all time. We got the Houston Texans going to Tennessee to play the Titans. The Texans have an implied team total of 22 points, and the Titans have an implied team total of 15.5 points. For the Texans, who have been struggling on offense the majority of the year, we have a lot of starts for you this week. We have Nico Collins, Dr. Schultz, Woody Marks, and Nick Chubb. We are starting both of the running backs in the Texans' backfield. And then we're going to tricky decision Dougie Mills. Is CJ Stroud is going to be missing this game. And coming off the fantasy quarterback one finish of the week, Dougie Mills. I think he's a perfectly acceptable streamer here if you have to do it, right? The Titans, we have no one for you. They just are a fantasy wasteland. They're going up against probably the best defense in the league. We're just not. We're just going to ignore them. Just if you have Titans guys, either drop them or sit them this week. No, thank you. For Nico Collins, he had a really good week against the Jaguars. I feel like he has a good chance to kind of pop off here too because of the quality of competition he's playing. This is the trade deadline week. I would try and move Nico Collins now if you can. If you can't, you're gonna have a good one this week. I think he's fine. He's a wide receiver one this week, I think. Dalton Schultz, in the absence of really any other playmakers, like he's been operating as a pretty good safety blanket for whoever the quarterback is, whether or not that's CJ or the Skycam. Dougie Mills, what do you have, like 90 yards and a touchdown last week? Obviously, negative game script. The Texans were throwing way more to catch up, but I think he's a totally fine startable streamer option here. Like maybe even mid-range tight end one if you want to get frisky with it. Yeah, he popped up on the injury report with like a shoulder or whatever. It sounds like he's gonna go. I'm not that concerned about it. Then for the running backs, this is one that I've seen a lot of chatter in the fantasy community. The fantasy community, I love them. I take in a lot of content. I always have my ears to the ground of what Twitter is saying about players and what fantasy analysts are saying about players. We're starting to get the Woody Marks has taken over the backfield chatter again from the rookie running back investors, from the Woody Marks investors, and I say this as I think I have 40% roster exposure to Woody Marks. He's my most traded for player on the year. I see the vision with Woody Marks. I'm telling you, I do. But what I also want to say is this is not a backfield takeover. Like it's just not. I know. What did Woody play? 80% of the snaps last week. So like, there's some thought that it's a takeover. Chubb was injured at practice. He barely went, and the Texans were trailing all game, which is what they've said. They prefer Marks to be in the game when they're trailing, right? He's the passing down back, and now it's like 50% of the rushing work. It feels like the Texans curb stomp a much lesser opponent here. And when they're in positive game scripts where they're just trying to run the ball in between the tackles, I think Chubb's a little bit better at that, at least right now. When they get to the goal line, I feel like Chubb's probably a little bit better of like a goal line back, just putting his head down and getting in the end zone, right? I prefer Woody Marks to Chubb in this spot, but I think you can start them both because of just how putrid the Titans are, especially without Jeffrey Simmons. It feels like positive game script. It feels like the Texans running the shit out of the ball. It feels like it's not close. Did I miss any Titans, Yanni? Are there any Titans that we missed that we should talk about?
No, I mean, you can't start Pollard or Spears against this defense. You just can't do it. It sounds like Ridley's going to come back this week. He got a limited practice in off that hamstring that's cost him a couple weeks. But again, you just can't start any of them here. You just can't do it. Okay, really pivotal game for the NFC standings for who might host the NFC Championship this year. Seahawks going onto the road to the Rams in what should be an absolute banger. Seahawks with an implied team total at 22.75. Rams with an implied team total at 25.75. For the Hawks, there's actually less to say here because they don't really diversify who they get the ball to, or at least when they get it to their secondary and tertiary, all those other weapons that they use that are not JSN, basically, it's in such a diffused manner that I don't really like targeting any of them necessarily. Does Shaheed change that as he gets a bigger role in the offense? It's very possible. I'm not sure. We'll have to see. For now, JSN and Sam Darnold are locked and loaded starters this week. What a good matchup. If you want to go a little highbrow, a little pricey on your DFS plays and you want to stack these two fellas, you have my full approval. If you want to throw in like a little tight end in there for Seattle, that might be interesting if you want to do a little Arroyo or a Barner. But I love these two guys, JSN, Darnold this week. I know Darnold has been a sketchy start here and there, but God, the Rams, they're such a pass funnel defense. They hemorrhage passing yards. And like Sam Darnold has actually been pretty lights out. I believe he is PFF's highest graded quarterback this year. So not now. I'm not sure what PFF grades are worth anymore with how they've been doing this year, but for whatever it's worth, he is. So they're both going to be starts for us. We are going to sit the running backs, both of them. The Rams give up the fewest fantasy points to running back in the NFL, particularly around the goal line, man. These guys are pit bulls. I have no interest in either one. I do have a roster where I just have to start Charbonnet. I've lost Mike Evans, Garrett Wilson, and Scattaboo. So I am at the point where I'm starting Zach Charbonnet, projected for 7 points against the number one defense and not allowing points to running back. If you're choosing between the two, I do prefer Charbonnet because I think he's more likely to get a touchdown. That's just how I've been evaluating it since like week 3 or 4. It's just they're both these weird RB3s, but at least Charbonnet might get a touchdown and blow up for like 15 points. He's done it a few times this week for me as my RB2 or my flex. So if you're going to start one, that's who I prefer. Probably just stay away. And then your sort of tricky decision, again, for DFS, dude. If you guys want to go super frisky and go Darnold, JSN, Shaheed as your wide receiver, quarterback, I might put in a card with that like right now, actually. I might right when we're off this call, I might do that. I just like Shaheed's odds to catch a bomb here. He's a sort of tricky decision. Like you could probably do a lot better in your flex, but if you need crazy ceiling, we're getting to the point in the year where I'm seeing some matches that are 27-point difference in the projected for the week in half PPR. Like 117 versus 90. If it's something like that, I kind of like flexing Shaheed here because like I think there's a non-zero chance he catches like 2 or 3 bombs. I think they're gonna have to keep up. I think this has real shootout potential here. I want pieces of it. I really do. I believe it's besides Dallas the highest point total of the week. So Shaheed's a sort of tricky decision with, to me, real upside, but almost no floor. That's the nature of the player. And then for the Rams, Puka, Kyron, Devontae. Devontae said his back hurts, but he's good to go. He had the old man injury. He juked a move and then just kind of pulled up with his back like my dad would when we were playing in the yard or whatever. It's kind of funny. Not so funny in that I need him for fantasy, but still kind of funny. But if he goes, you're starting him, and his red zone usage is rock solid. I'm not worried about the quality secondary from the Seahawks, just like I'm not with Puka Nacua. Puka Nacua is one of the best players in the NFL. He's one of the best fantasy assets in the NFL. Roll him out there, start him with confidence. Don't like that he's been trashing our Niners all week after beating our hospital unit of a team, but he has been. But it's his right to do. And then Kyron Williams. Again, man, we're doing these cycles that Ted talks about with the fantasy community, and I am not a fan of Kyron Williams, to be very honest with you. And I have Blake Corum on 7 of my 12 rosters, so I'm getting up into like whatever that is, like 50, 57, 58, 60% rostering of Corum because I think Corum is such a quality handcuff. But like when they get up big or when they have a firm control of the game, they did this against the Titans. Everyone went out and added Blake Corum thinking, is the takeover here? Is it a 50-50 split? Do we need to sell Kyron? When they got up big against the 49ers, Corum gets run. I think he got like 56 yards or something like that. They just do that when they're up enough that they're beating the shit out of a team and they put Corum in. That's what they've been doing all year. It's not some big shift in usage. Kyron is still seeing anywhere from 60 to 70% of the touches in the backfield. Now, it's not the 80+% he saw last year. It's not like the true super premium bell cow usage that made him, I think he was running back 6 or 7 by the end of the year. That's gone. That's over with. It's just not coming back. But 60 to 70% is a true blue bell cow. That's what a modern day bell cow is. It's not an old school bell cow, but it is. So I'm not worried about it. I'm starting Kyron here. I want no part of Blake Corum this week. I don't think this is going to be a game where they get ahead and they can hand it off to him. He's not even on our list. And then Stafford is a sort of tricky decision. He has been on fire lately in fantasy. He's been one of the best quarterbacks in fantasy this season. I know I just said it's going to be a shootout. I think they're going to try to work Kyron. I think they're going to try to keep the ball away from the Seahawks. I don't know if this Rams secondary has an answer for JSN and Sam Darnold the way they're playing, or Rashid Shaheed for that matter. We just saw Jawan Jennings go off against him pretty well. Like Jawan Jennings is dunking on your secondary. I think JSN can do some serious work there. If Kendrick Bourne and Mac Jones look like Jerry Rice and Joe Montana against you, I feel pretty good about the number one rated receiver and number one rated quarterback in the NFL who seem to have a mind meld like maybe no other combo that's playing right now. Obviously Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow, but they're not out there. So it's like, dude, I think they're going to try to play keep away here. I think their ground game will have a serious and decided advantage in terms of the matchup, but just also in terms of their ground game against Seattle. So that's the only reason that Stafford's a sort of tricky decision. I understand for most of you guys, you would not think of sitting him right now, and I don't think it's a bad start if you have to start him. I just think you could do a little better. Personally, for me, I don't know if Ted would agree with it. I would rather start Jordan Love or JJ McCarthy. That's just my thing. And then Darnold. I would actually rather start Darnold here too. So
Oh, okay. So for me, this was a difference in pre-show. For me, Stafford was a start here. Over the last 5 weeks, he has 20 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. He's worked his way up to a co-favorite for the MVP with Drake May. And
yep.
both of the Seahawks losses, they've surrendered over 300 yards in the air to the quarterback, right? It feels like the way the Seahawks D line is playing, they're getting so many stuffs on running plays that you have to beat them in the air. So I like Stafford a little bit more than Yanni does, but I would still prefer Darnold here because, like you said, the Rams secondary just is not good enough. They don't have good enough players back there. But yeah, that's really it. I think we're going to figure out a lot about these teams. I definitely have a hierarchy in this game. I think that there's a clear difference in the quality of these teams, and we're going to figure it out on Sunday. But I've seen a lot of Seahawks fans. I've seen a lot of Seahawks truthers out there. John Middlecoff last week, he said if he had to power rank the teams, like he power ranked the college football or whatever, right? You know how they have the AP poll or whatever. He said he'd put the Seahawks at 1. I could not disagree more. I think we might see a Darnold turnover or 2 here. He had 3 last week against the Cardinals. He like in these wins where the Seahawks are blowing teams out, Darnold's turning the ball over. That's not to say I don't like him in this matchup because I think he's gonna like have a lot of production. Same with JSN. I think he has a very good case to be the wide receiver 1 this week. But definitely feel like this is a Rams game for sure. Maybe
I
on the
I
gambling
think
show.
I think what you could argue about this one, if you wanted to pick, but one, I think the Rams offense is just clearly better. It's different, dude. When you have one of the greatest quarterbacks in the history of the league throwing to one of the greatest, I don't care if Devontae's old. I think Devontae and Puka this year are one of the better wide receiver tandems that have ever taken the field together. They're as good as any 2 wide receivers that have ever played together. Like they are that level, in my opinion. Maybe I'm a prisoner of the moment. And then their running game is so much better than Seattle's, at least in theory. I think in theory, Seattle's could be better if they workhorse Walker, but that's a conversation we don't need to retread right now. To me, I think offensively, the Rams are much better, but defensively, I think you could argue the Seahawks are a much more complete defense in terms of their run pass balance, in terms of like their coordinating. Like to me, I really do think their head coach is on a different level of coordinating. So who you pick between these 2 teams or who you prefer, like I think you could argue the Seahawks are kind of a one-trick pony. They're kind of just the JSN and Darnold connection, and then hopefully run the ball, run the game out when they get ahead. The problem is it's a really good trick. like it's a really good trick. And then they just added Rashid Shaheed, who I actually think does add an element to the offense. But yeah, dude, I don't know. Yeah. So we'll see. We'll talk about it on the gambling show if you pick it.
All right. I get the Niners game for the week. I feel like this is the third straight week I've had them, but I actually think they might win this game. They're going to Arizona to play the Cardinals. The Niners have an implied team total of 25 and a quarter points, and the Cardinals have an implied team total of 22 and a quarter points. It is the Ricky return week, boys. Ricky Pearsall, one of my most drafted players, is going to be back. I'm stoked on it. But he is going to be a tricky decision for us this week. So let's run through everyone. Kittle's a start. CMC's a start. I feel like those two are no duh. We're going to put Jawan Jennings as a start here. And then we're going to tricky decision Mac Jones and Ricky Pearsall. More on that in a minute. Then for the Cardinals, we're going to start Trey McBride, obviously. We're going to start. So this is conditional. If Trey Benson, and it looks like he's not going to go as of Wednesday, if Trey Benson does not go, we're starting Amari DiMercado. If Trey Benson does go, we're going to start Trey Benson, and Amari DiMercado is not touching your starting lineups, okay? And then we're going to start Michael Wilson here because Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be out because he just had a surgery for appendicitis. Get well soon, brother. And then we're going to tricky decision Jacoby Brissett, aka the Brisket. And let's jump to our Niners here because I feel like we got some explaining to do. George Kittle finally had a nice week. I think it was like 15, 16 half PPR fantasy points in a
18
position.
point.
Oh, it was 18. Okay. I I should have known that because I have a Kittle roster that I just traded for, and I thought it was 15. But okay. But yeah, really though, the tight end position is tough, and Kittle is very clearly to me a centerpiece of what the 49ers offense is doing, especially without Brandon Ayuk and most of the wide receivers missing for the majority of the year, right? Even with Ricky coming back, I feel like Kittle's still going to be heavily involved. I feel like when the Niners get in the red zone, by far the most likely guy to catch a touchdown is George Kittle. Elite tight end one for me this week in a pretty soft matchup against the Cardinals that they are. I feel like their scheme, the Cardinals' defensive scheme, is pretty good, but they just don't have that many guys on the defensive end, right? CMC, no explanation needed. He's one of the best players you could have possibly drafted. If you were brave enough to take CMC at like 7 or 8 overall, congratulations, man. That was a great pick. Then Jawan Jennings, he's finally getting a little bit healthier. He had the good week last week against the Rams. I think he had like maybe
14.1.
14.1. He got the touchdown. We're going to prefer him this week to Ricky just because Ricky's been gone for like 6 weeks at this point. Jawan feels like he's finally getting a little more healthy, right? He had to work through the 5 broken ribs and the hurt shoulder and the hurt ankle and
Two
everything.
ankles. Two ankles.
Two ankles. So it's both his ankles, 5 broken ribs, the shoulder. He's just been a mess all year, but he's finally getting a little more healthy. We're finally starting to see what we saw last year with Jawan Jennings. The Cardinals don't have really a shutdown corner or anything. The Niners have shown that they're really like a pass first team at this point in time. So I think Jawan Jennings totally flexible this week. I even really like the flex. For Mac Jones, we're calling him a tricky decision. I feel like that's pretty accurate for the player he is, right? He doesn't have the rushing upside, but he's throwing a lot and he's doing really well throwing the ball. I feel like that's self-explanatory. There is a chance Brock Purdy comes back this week. If you've noticed, this show has not told you that every single week because we're Niners fans and we kind of can see in between the lines of what's happening at practice, right? Brock Purdy actually has a pretty good shot to come back this week. He was limited in Wednesday, but Kyle Shanahan described it as he is going to aggressively practice and try and get back on the field. We're not going to tell you that Brock Purdy is going to play until there's an official announcement, right? So that's why we have Mac there. If Brock was playing, I feel like he'd be in the same spot as Mac. Tricky decision, especially coming off turf toe. I'm not feeling any need to force him into my lineups. I'd like to kind of see how the chips fall first. And then Ricky. For me, all this is with Ricky is I just want to see him look like he did before he went down, right? With these LCL injuries, we see players that like miss a lot of time, like Brock Bowers, and come back and look like they haven't missed a step, right? I'm extremely bullish on Ricky Pearsall rest of season. He was a great buy low candidate. I made a trade in one league. I shipped off Hampton for Ricky Pearsall. I got texts in that league asking me what I was doing or why I did that, right? I'm telling you, boys, I think Ricky has a chance here to make a difference in your rosters, especially down the stretch run, especially with the like. It looks like Brandon Ayuk just isn't going to be a factor for the 49ers this
Nope.
season, right? I think
Nope.
Ricky Pearsall is going to be, by the end of the season, the unquestioned wide receiver one on this pass first offense with Mac Jones and Brock Purdy, both good quarterbacks. Kyle likes him. He was a first round pick. Even before he went down, he was making some of the most incredible catches. The last time he played the Cardinals, he had 8 grabs for 151 yards. I love the spot for Ricky Pearsall rest of the season. I'm just gonna be a little cautious first week back, right? For Arizona, last week was a complete abomination in my mind against the Seahawks. I don't even think that was a real game for the most part. The two quick defensive touchdowns really just put the Cardinals down. It was not a contest anymore. I think this is going to be a contest, and I really still like what I'm seeing from the Cardinals offense with Jacoby Brissett steering the ship. Trey McBride, I think he has an argument to be the tight end one overall this week. Again, it depends on where you have Bowers and Kittle in that conversation, right? But 5 touchdowns in the last 3 weeks that like eclipses his career totals with Kyler Murray playing already. Like, no duh, especially against a defense that's just hemorrhaging yards to everyone. Allowed 42 last week to the Rams. I think it's a great spot for him. DeMercado and Benson, it's just whoever starts there, right? It's an entirely crippled defensive unit. Like, it just is what it is. It's such a bummer as a Niners fan because like we could see the vision with the team, but they're just out of bodies at this point, so they're officially a plus matchup. And then Michael Wilson, he's been producing with Jacoby Brissett, with Marvin Harrison Jr. down. He's going to be the de facto wide receiver one. I think he's totally flexible this week. He's the only pass catcher we're going to recommend, though. We're not getting into the Greg Dortch business or whatever else the Cardinals decide to roll out, but I think Michael Wilson is fine. And then Jacoby Brissett, just quietly over the past month, over 20 fantasy points per game every single week. I think that's the definition of what you're looking for in your quarterback one, right? And this Niners team just got destroyed by Matt Stafford. I think it's a great spot for Jacoby Brissett. Should be a back and forth game. The Niners are kind of turning into that Bengals or Cowboys archetype now too, of team where it seems like everything's just going to be a fantasy friendly shootout. So I think he's totally acceptable as a tricky decision this week. What do you think, man?
Not a whole lot. I certainly, for my prop bets for the game, I do them for the 49ers hub every week. I'm definitely, I mean, we'll see what the over under is on DeMercado, but DraftKings also lets you just pick an over a certain number of yards if you want to slide the number around. I think I'm going to hit the DeMercado over on rushing yards this week, and then I'm interested in the Wilson over on reception. So I think those are two really good prop bets to play because I think these guys are slated for pretty good usage. And then we'll see. Juwan Jennings over under on receptions has been sitting at 4.5 for the last 2 or 3 weeks, and I've been kind of pinging that. I actually took him at 4+ the week before when he hit 4, and then last week I took him at over 4.5 and he hit 5. So if it's around 4.5 again too, I think you can go ahead and hit the Juwan Jennings prop bet this week.
Do you think the Niners win this one? Do we finally get a happy Sunday?
I believe I'm going to put it in my 5 bets for 49ers hub to go ahead and take the 49ers +3. Yes, I do think they win this one. I think they bring it home.
Let's go.
Okay, man. Again, you talk about a huge game. I mean, what are we at here? Are the Chiefs are 5-4 because they had their bye, and the Broncos are 7-2 or 8-2? They
Eight and
haven't had their
two.
bye yet.
They're an 8-2
8-2.
team.
8-2. Okay, so we have 5-4 and 8-2, and really, if the Chiefs go 5-5 here with the way the Chargers and Broncos are playing, all of a sudden the Chiefs are like fighting for their life for a wild card spot. I expect to see the absolute best punch the Chiefs have here. I like them even with a bad number at +3.5, but -3.5. Chiefs with an implied team total at 24, going up to Mile High with an implied team total of 20.5 for the Denver Broncos. The lead editor for 49ers Hub is a Broncos fan, so we've been going back and forth all year in the league. He goes, dude, we're so ass. He's like it's really interesting to see the absolute panic and consternation amongst the Broncos fans about an 8-2 season. But to me, it's totally got the vibes of like when Philly came out to that start of 11-0 before the Niners went out and hammered them at home. It's like this weird thing where they're winning games, but it doesn't look right to me at all. And I'm wondering if this is like a Bill comes due week here. Like they've been getting away with some stuff that you're just not going to get away with against Spagnuolo, Andy Reid, Mahomes in a must-win situation where I don't know if they can catch the Chargers for the division, but if they're going to, they absolutely need this one. I know they can leapfrog the Broncos and get in a better position for the wild card at the minimum, right? The Bills are going to be competing for a wild card. Like, there's real stakes here. This is a very important game for a divisional game in Week 11. Like, it's about as important as it gets, in my opinion, for the shape of the league this year. Could you imagine if by some crazy system of the series of events, the Chiefs missed the playoffs? And then all of a sudden, every fan base is going to feel like they have like a 48% better chance to win this year. It's just huge. So we're starting Mahomes. This is off of a bye too, by the way. Oh my God, please bet the Chiefs. It's free. In my opinion, it's free. I don't speak like that a lot. I let Ted make the fucking hammer it statement. This is an easy one. I tend to be a little more careful with my bets. Like, they're coming off a bye in a must-win situation. They've had 2 weeks to game plan for this, and Bo Nix looks like a fish out of water. Anyway, Mahomes throwing to Rice and Kelsey. I'm starting Mahomes. I'm starting Rice. I'm starting Kelsey. And there's no Patrick Surtain back yet. And then Kareem Hunt, I think, is a perfectly reasonable. It doesn't look like Pacheco's going to go this week. Do check your wires if Pacheco's out there. I probably want him rostered, and I saw him dropped in a lot of leagues, but it doesn't look like he's going to go this week. I think Kareem Hunt's a perfectly fine upside flex play. We might see more Brashard Smith coming out of the bye, post-bye rookie bump. I just think that Kareem Hunt's the most likely to get a touchdown. Hell, he's the most likely to get 2 touchdowns with the usage they use. And then this was actually interesting. I did this subconsciously. I just put other receivers as our sits for this one. I didn't even really realize I'm folding Worthy into other receivers. But is his usage that fundamentally different from Thornton, from Brown? Not really. He hasn't really had a game where he's popped off since Rashee Rice has been back. And keep him rostered, and I think you can throw him in your emergency flex spot like you can with Keenan Allen, right? And then, you don't feel terrible. You don't feel like you're wasting that spot or something, but I just don't know if we're going to ever see that ceiling that was there after Rice got injured last year. If you were a Rashee Rice proponent, you're going to point to, I knew it all along, it's the low A dot Andy Reid roll, and I was right, and the Worthy guys were wrong. If you're a Worthy guy, you're going to point to, he got injured, they're not giving him the full route tree, and he never had a fair shot this year after he got the injury week 1. We will never know. To me, it's some combination of those two. I think we don't know what Worthy could have been this year, and I think he very well could have been what he was in the second half of last year if he didn't get so banged up. Because part of the thing that happens is when you get banged up like that, you can't run the short A dot stuff because that's when you're taking your lumps. Like, we see Rashee Rice lining up at running back. We see him taking goal line sweeps. You can't really do that with a messed up shoulder, So I don't really know. I was a Rashee Rice guy coming into the year, but I was a Worthy guy too. I thought they would be able to exist as this tandem that was both productive. But whether it's injuries, whether it's usage, Rashee Rice is nothing more than kind of a flashy bench piece at this point. Sadly for someone with that much incredible
Worthy is a
talent.
flashy bench piece.
Worthy,
Rashee
yeah.
Rice is like
I'm
potentially
sorry.
top
Yeah.
5.
Yeah. No. Start Rashee Rice. Start Rashee Rice. Yeah. I'm sorry. Flip their names. Yes. Worthy. It's a bummer. Worthy's an incredible like physical talent. Like the speed that he has on the field is very unique, and it's just not. Yeah. For the Broncos. Okay. RJ Harvey. I had a weird situation this year where someone dropped RJ Harvey in a league that's incredibly competitive. This thing is crazy. Some of the trades these guys were able to pull off, like there's 2 or 3 legitimate super teams. I'm talking about teams with like 120, 122 projected with 1 flex and half PPR. It's incredible. It's very rare you see that. So someone dropped Harvey and I dropped $82 of my fab, 82% on him, and I got him by 4%. I picked him up just for this moment, assuming that J.K. Dobbins can't get through the year healthy, and when he can't get through healthy, we're going to start him. It's not a great matchup that it's coming against, but you need to start R.J. Harvey this week. There's been talk that it's going to be Batty and who's the Jaleel McLaughlin, that those guys are going to get 50, 60% of the work. I don't think so. I think long down and distance, Batty's going to get, because he's been taking it all year. But I think it's going to be the RJ Harvey show, especially in the red zone. He had like 3 or 4 or 5 touchdowns the 2 weeks before this last week. I think Sean Payton's going to roll out his rookie that he invested very premium draft capital in and let him do work. And especially if the Chiefs are limiting them downfield and forcing him to work the ball methodically, I love his upside because he'll catch passes too out of the backfield this year. I'm starting Harvey this week. I think you guys should too. We're going to sit Nix and Ingram. Bo Nix has looked so shitty this year against even moderately competent defenses. Spagnuolo off a bye, dude. He's had 2 weeks to sit there and pick him apart, to break him down, to do nothing but worry about how to win this game because it's going to shape the outcome of their season. Like, this is their Yeah, because they play again in week 17. This is their first matchup of the year, so like this is a matchup that they need to get right twice. I think Spagnuolo is going to have Knicks in hell this week. Like to me, dude, this thing has blowout potential on the other end. I have no interest in Bo Nix this week. I would much rather start any of the other guys we've discussed. And then Ingram shouldn't be rostered anymore in half PPR. And then your sort of tricky decisions, Sutton and Franklin. I know that Franklin has been out producing and out usaging Sutton the last 2 or 3 weeks. I still think Sutton's the one on this team. But I wonder if they're giving Franklin full run to sort of condition him for like if they need to trade Sutton next year or something. Just if they need to get younger and progress the team. I don't know. Sutton's like a fine flex for me. I actually have a roster with Sutton and Harvey, and I'm going to go ahead and start Harvey over him. And then for the wide receivers in that one, it's Collins and Rashi Rice, so it's not close. But like I would still be like I would personally, I would actually rather start Sutton than AJ Brown this week, even with the bad matchup. It's close, but I'd probably prefer Sutton. I would prefer Tetaroa McMillan to Sutton, but it's close. He's in that neighborhood. I would prefer like Jawan Jennings. I would actually, Ted might not agree with that one. I would prefer Jawan Jennings over Sutton. So, that's like pretty far back when we're getting to Jawan Jennings over Sutton territory. Like I personally have a pretty hard fade on him this week. So yeah, that's what we have for the game.
Yeah, I mean, if we want to talk about the Broncos, right? Troy Franklin, like he's had wide receiver one usage over that 3 week sample where Sutton's really been disappointing, right? But Franklin's not popping off like in getting that wide receiver one like production like Cortland Sutton was, right? Cortland Sutton, I don't think is cooked by any
Yep.
means, right? I think he's still a very good player. It's just that Bo Nix has been so bad, right? And the usage hasn't necessarily been going his way that like there's going to be other starts for Sutton this year. It's more so that this matchup is horrendous, right? And then for the Broncos, I would say we need to start RJ Harvey with full confidence. I'm just echoing what you said, right? But I feel like part of the reason that people are kind of weirded out about RJ Harvey is they're like, oh, well, he's a speed back, right? Maybe Sean Payton wants to do something else on the goal line. Tyler Batty is a significantly smaller, not as good power back as RJ Harvey. And then I don't think Jaleel McLaughlin is on the team, actually. You know who their RB3 is?
Yeah, he is. He is. He's on their squad. So, but no, who is their RB3 right now on the depth chart?
Deuce Vaughn. Deuce Vaughn, the
Really?
little 5'8" fella. Yeah, dude, do not
Yeah.
worry about RJ Harvey getting goal line in this game. He's going to get it in this game. All right, next one. We got an AFC North matchup. We got the Baltimore Ravens going to Cleveland to play the Brownies. The Ravens have an implied team total of 23.5 points, and the Browns have an implied team total of 16 points. For the Ravens, this is pretty boilerplate. We're starting Lamar Jackson. We're starting Zay Flowers. We're starting Mark Andrews, and we're starting Derrick Henry. We're going to sit Rashad Bateman, and then we're going to tricky decision Isaiah Likely. Then for the Browns, we're really scraping the bottom of the barrel here, but we're starting the big Q, and we're starting David Njoku. Then we're going to tricky decision Harold Fannin Jr. and Jerry Jeudy. And we'll start with the Browns first. The big Q, I feel like he's just a good player. It's very clear that the offense, he's the engine of the entire offense. The Browns in a perfect world would like to play good defense and just lean on their running game and give Big Q anywhere in the neighborhood of 22 to 25 touches a game and keep it within a score, right? I worry that the Ravens are going to be able to have success offensively here and kind of put the Browns behind the 8 ball, and Big Q kind of gets phased out a little bit. Because when the Browns go down, what they're doing is they're throwing a lot with Dylan Gabriel, and then Dylan Sampson's getting in there as the passing down back, right? At least what I'm going to operate under the assumption of, though, is the Browns have played significantly better defense in Cleveland versus on the road, right? So they're getting their ideal defensive matchup. I think the Browns can keep it close enough to where Big Q gets his. He's like a RB2 for me this week. The Ravens are still banged up defensively, especially on their D line, but they did get Roquan Smith back. They did get Kyle Van Noy back, and the unit as a whole is playing better. So I don't think they're this total cupcake like they have been at previous points in the season. With the tight ends, Njoku and Fannin, it's kind of been this weird split all year. There's the contingent of all rookies are future Hall of Famers, guys that have been saying Fannin's the guy you want to own here. Fannin's the guy you want to own here. Last week he out targeted David Njoku 7-2, so there might have been some smoke there. I'm not sure, But Harold Fannin Jr. popped up on the injury report this week in practice. So now it's like, okay, what do you want to do with this? I feel like Njoku's the safer play here. So I would prefer to start him over Harold Fannin Jr. It's still close to me. Like, I mean, if you are dead set on, picking one side of this Browns tight end room, I think Fannin could still be startable, but I'm just going to go with the healthier guy, David Njoku. I think that it's pretty close between the two of them. And then Jerry Jeudy, tricky decision. He's had some of the best wide receiver usage the entire season, and that's resulted in like anywhere in the neighborhood of 4 to 6 points a game. It just has not been there because, like many other teams that we've talked about, the quarterback play has not been good enough, right? The Ravens, since they're playing better, it feels like this is not a spot where Dylan Gabriel is going to pop off. I feel like I wouldn't try and chase last week's points here, but he's getting targets at a minimum, right? If you have faith that the Browns may be down multiple scores here, Dylan Gabriel has to throw, and Jerry Judy's the guy to target in garbage time. You could do it. I lean more sit here than tricky decision. For the Ravens, Lamar Jackson had a sub 20-point game last week against who did they play last week,
Minnesota.
Yanni? Yeah,
Minnesota.
oh yeah, that's right. It was the 9 game. I'm chalking that up to an excellent defensive game plan from Brian Flores, and the Ravens just kind of not really having to air it out that much because they were up the majority of the game, right? Lamar Jackson is still an elite quarterback one. I think that he's going to go over 20 points this week. I think don't freak out if you are a Lamar Jackson owner. Zay Flowers continues to get really good usage. It just wasn't a huge volume week for the Ravens passing attack last week. Be patient with this guy. I feel like especially near the end of the season here, you're gonna have some of these Zay Flowers games where he pops off like he did at the beginning of the year, and he could win you weeks in your flex spot. He is still just a flex to me, but he's like a really high upside flex. It's exactly what we're going for in my opinion for your flex play, right? You want to have at least enough of a floor where if you have the floor game that you're not killed by it, I guess. But on those ceiling games, you want those flex players that can just win you the week from that high point game. I think that's totally live here. I know it's a tough defense in the Cleveland Browns, but with Lamar Jackson back, I feel like this offense is just full steam ahead. Derrick Henry, also a start for us. He's just kind of, been ho humming his way to anywhere between 11 and 13 points. He just hasn't had the touchdown equity the past couple weeks. I feel like great buy low candidate if you did it. I see people on TikTok making fun of people that say buy Derrick Henry low, but really there are some managers that are freaking out about it. Do not freak out about it. Maybe this isn't the ideal matchup because the Cleveland Browns have been good against the run all year, but we're still starting him here. He's like a on the RB1, RB2 borderline. Then Mark Andrews is also a start for us. With Lamar Jackson back in the starting lineup, I feel like Andrews is lost at least one or maybe two steps this season in terms of like the quality of player that he is, but he's still a red zone target for Lamar. I think that those years and years of familiarity are really paying off. I think last week he had 2 grabs for 2 touchdowns. Against the Dolphins, he had like 1 or 2 grabs for a touchdown, right? He's getting in the end zone like almost 50% of his touches. You only need one, right? All Andrews has to do is get in the end zone. He pays off where he was like a low end tight end one in your lineup. I think that's fine here. You can chase that. Rashad Bateman, he's just like an even more Walmart version of Jamison Williams, where like he's kind of a big play merchant. He has like these weeks where he pops off and other weeks where he doesn't. I just don't see the Ravens having to really chase much here. I would look elsewhere against a pretty good defense in what could be like a ball control, run the ball game. And then likely tricky decision. It looks like he has more juice to me in the tight end room, but he's not getting the looks in the end zone. He is getting anywhere in the neighborhood of like 3, 4, 5 targets a game, though. The Ravens running a lot of two tight end. He's getting some yards. I think that it's a reasonable tight end like flex or not flex play, but a tight end replacement if you have one of these guys that's on bye or injured. But it's low end to me. He's a good player though, so there's always the chance that it's the week that he gets the touchdown and pops off, and then you'd be happy with it. What do you think, man?
I don't know, nothing too interesting. The Fannin Jr. thing is a bummer. I held him in a couple leagues just hoping something would happen. They have the number one expected fantasy points per game to tight end, and Harold Fannin Jr. gets over a 19% target share. It is on the Browns, right? It's not worth a ton, but he does lead the team in target share and receiving yards on the team with the number one expected fantasy points per game to tight end. And just when it seemed like he was really going to take that role, like last week, he tweaks his hamstring in practice, then comes out and doesn't have a great game, and then retweaks it this week. And it's like I'm kind of worried that at this point it just looks like whatever that ceiling that might have been there that I do actually think was validly there. I just don't know if he's going to reach it this year. Unfortunately, it may be a next year play at this point. Okay, probably the game of the week. What I'm most excited for. I mean, you could argue that the Chiefs or Broncos, but this is the game for me. Dan Campbell calling the plays 2.0. The Lions with a 22-point implied team total, which seems a little low. Going to the Eagles with a 24.5-point implied team total at home. Look, for the Lions, like this is an outdoor game for them, right? We do tend to see some splits with Jared Goff, but if there's not weather, we're not going to worry about it too much. It's on Sunday night. So we'll see. Sunday night, like Dan Campbell tends to do pretty well in prime time. Look, we're starting Goff here. He's going to have to pass a lot. I know these Eagles just destroyed Jordan Love, but with all due respect to Jordan Love, I do think Jared Goff is a different level of quarterback cognitively. I don't know if he's like a great start, but he is a start for me. He's on a lot of 2 QB rosters. You may have better options out there, but again, like if you need someone in your start, like I think it's perfectly fine. Gibbs has been like creeping up, man, in some of these games. So when he got a 50-50 use in their game that they looked horrible against the Vikings, then he comes out and gets like 70% with Dan Campbell calling plays the next week. I don't know. Again, right? I'm a heavy Gibbs investor. I'm so biased on this that don't take my word for it. It just looks to me like the offense looks so different when they feature Jahmyr Gibbs over when they feature Monty. I just wonder if this thing's working toward a 70% share for him. Dan Campbell alluded to that this week a little bit, that they've been looking at him and JMO's usage and leaning into it more. I wonder if we see it continue here. Certainly the game script will be right for it. I think we're live for another RB1 overall finish. Or he hasn't, what's funny is he actually hasn't gotten the RB1 overall finish in either of his 35 plus point half PPR games because Jonathan Taylor went off that same week. Just a legendary year for running back, but an explosion game. I think we're very live for it here, even against the tough defense. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown, no explanation needed. JMO. This one does need a little explanation. JMO is one of my favorite, like lesser known starts of the week. He will be my captain in DFS for this lineup this week. JMO on crossfield routes is like over 4 yards per route run. He on play action across the field is absolutely killing it. He's like, I forget what the number is. He's skyrocketing though. The Eagles have been particularly vulnerable to cross field play action routes. To me, dude, I think they're going to go in here with this air it out game plan. He's averaged over 17 points per game since they came out and apologized to JMO for misusing him. He's had a 14-point week and a 20-plus point week in half PPR the last 2 games he's played. Do I want to get too excited and say it's all changed now and we're back to top 15 Jameson Williams like he finished last year? I don't know about that, but I'm curious. I'm curious to see what a third week of this shift looks like. Do they continue it? He clearly looks like behind Gibbs their most explosive player. I love him here. Get him in your lineup. I wish I could fit him in more of my lineups with Jameson Williams. I would have to either bench RJ Harvey for him, which I don't think I can do, or I would have to bench, say, Flowers for him, which is closer, maybe. And I am rolling him over Ricky Pearsall this week. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. And then Laporta, again, with the point totals here, like with the way the game should be, I would go ahead and roll Laporta. I know the Eagles are pretty good defensively against the tight end, but I think you're starting him. And then we're going to sit Monty. I don't like Monty in these kind of games. You need him to get the touchdown or you need him to get ahead enough to give him work. And I think they're going to have to really pass the ball. The only thing is Gibbs was getting beat up in pass blocking a little bit, which they kind of hinted at being a reason that Monty got more snaps than him against the Vikings. I do wonder if the Eagles go really blitz heavy, does Monty take a bigger workload this week? I think that's possible. I'm more inclined to say that they would opt for the offensive explosion of Gibbs over the safety and the pass blocking of Monty, but maybe there's a window there. I still don't want to start him. For the Eagles, there's one hot take here, but these ones are not. You're starting Jalen Hurts. You're starting Saquon Barkley. You're starting Devonta Smith, who is like the wide receiver 14 right now in points per game this year. Devonta Smith has been going off. Looks like one of the best wide receivers in football for the last 5 or 6 weeks. Honestly, this program's always been a big fan of Devonta Smith. And then Goddard. Goddard just gets such good usage. You're going to keep rolling him out there. He's always live to get a touchdown. He's like a great tight end to be rostering on your team. I think you have to feel really good about him. And then your sort of tricky decision, this would be the hot take, is going to be AJ Brown. I don't think AJ Brown's a weekly locked and loaded starter anymore. He told you he wasn't. He told you if you have him on your fantasy team, get rid of him. That is straight from the horse's mouth. And AJ Brown, he pretty plainly said in an interview, you guys can see what's wrong. You can see I'm unhappy. He has now been, there's been 2 years straight that he has trashed Jalen Hurts pretty openly to the media at this point. I think it's safe to say he is gone after this year. Maybe that's too definitive of a statement, but I don't see how they run this thing back. And look, to his credit, I think he's enough of a team guy that he's going to hang in there. We saw the big pass downfield. Let me actually pull up really quick. AJ Brown. There was a fantasy points post from him that was pretty interesting that surprised me. Basically, when you look at his play in isolation this year, I can't find it, but it was interesting. His play in isolation, his separation metrics, his route win rate, his contested win rate, the rate at which he has to make contested catches because he's not separating, he's down like 5 to 10% in every major isolation metric we look at for wide receiver. It's kind of interesting. There was at least an implication from fantasy points, right? The data service on Twitter. There was at least an implication there that maybe his play's fallen off a little bit. Eye test wise, I don't see that. So I don't, a lot of the time when I hear like an advanced analytic like that or a really specific or idiosyncratic stat like that, I'm inclined to write it off until I really see it. Because to me, I think you can kind of fudge the data a little bit there. But there's at least some, and also reception perception over on Yahoo. Oh my God, what's his name? The Yahoo guy, whatever.
Matt
The
Harmon.
reception perception. Matt Harmon. Matt Harmon seems to think his play has dropped off too. He's saying in isolation that him and Devonta are no longer the same caliber of player. I'm just throwing that out there as an interesting conversation to watch for the year. There seems to be some of the film guys seem to think that it's not the same AJ. That's not what it looks like to me. It looks like they're just not getting him the ball correctly. Did you also see, Ted, the theory that I don't know, the theory, the implication or whatever, when Nick Sirianni looked at Jalen Hurts on that third down bomb and said, "What the fuck was that?" when he was coming to the sideline? Apparently that was just a thing that him and AJ decided to do, was call their own number to end the game. That was not what Sirianni called or wanted him to do. Did you see that?
I saw the interview, and Sirianni said he knew exactly what the play was
Okay.
at the
Okay.
post
Well, then
game.
I
So I
don't
don't
know if
know.
that.
Maybe he's full of shit. Like maybe he's trying to
I don't.
protect his guys. It's getting weird. Like I've been the number one Eagles defender this year. I've been the number one. Don't panic about this offense this year. Well, listen, man. When AJ Brown is going and playing Madden with like a streamer and like saying, "Yeah, this is the only time I get the ball. Good things happen when
Oh
you throw me the
God.
ball." Like you gotta listen to him, man. Like he's clearly pissed off by the situation, and I think he's way too good of a player to not be getting the ball. I think that he's clearly the best wide receiver on the team. I love Smitty. I think Smitty's great, but he's not AJ Brown, right? So I don't know what to make of it, man. But where I've landed on AJ Brown rest of season is I think he's like we were just talking about like the high upside flex with Zay Flowers. I think that's exactly what AJ Brown is. He has the potential to just erupt in your flex spot, right? Like we had the game against the Vikings where he popped off. I think he had 4 catches and that resulted in like 28 half PPR fantasy points, right? Because he's still an
Yeah.
explosive player, he's still a physical freak, but man, like based on what the usage has been the past month, based on what the fantasy points have been the past month, I feel like Smith is the much more safe option at this point.
Yeah.
And I've been singing the tale of, oh, Devontae Smith, AJ Brown, they deal with the same type of variance. You just have to accept this on the Eagles, right? I feel like Smith and Goddard are becoming like these weirdly consistent players, and AJ Brown is the only one who has that variance. So take it for what you will. I'm still rostering AJ Brown. I didn't try and sell high on AJ Brown. I think I'm going to win a championship with AJ Brown on the roster I have him on, but just is what it is for now. It's absolutely wild that he like it feels like he had his mask on like for the media like pretty much all season until the trade deadline. And now he's like, yeah, if you have eyes, you can see that shit isn't going well, right? I think he said on that Madden game he was playing, he's like, yeah, it's a shit show right now. It's kind of interesting. I've never seen a more dysfunctional 8-2 football team. And also Nick Sirianni is now the fourth all time in head coach winning percentage. His next target is Vince Lombardi. He's like I think zero point 0.2 percentage points away from Vince Lombardi. So I don't know, man. Maybe shoe in Hall of Famer.
Correlation equals causation. That's definitely what a statistician would tell you.
Hey, you know what? It's the whole crux of the argument, right? I'm happy that you're taking a stand and saying, hey, some stats aren't necessarily telling the entire story. All right, we're to Monday night now. I cannot wait to lose critical fantasy matchups in this one. Because not only is it the Monday night game, it's the Dallas Cowboys on Monday night, and we know what happens with the Dallas Cowboys in any fantasy matchup they're involved in. They're going to be going to Allegiant Stadium to play the Raiders. Cowboys have an implied team total of 27 points, and the Raiders have an implied team total of 23.5 points. For the Cowboys, we are starting everyone. That's pretty simple, right? And then for the Raiders, we're going to start Brock Bowers, Ashton Genty, Trey Tucker, and then I'm noticing he's not on here, Yanni. You know what I'm going to ask? Is Geno
Gino,
Smith a start this week?
I just didn't put him on there because I only put fantasy relevant guys. I think he's like an emergency two quarterback play. I would not be starting him in one quarterback leagues at all. He shouldn't be rostered in one quarterback leagues.
This is the Dallas
So
Cowboys, man. Like I think Geno is a totally acceptable start this week if you're gonna do that. I wouldn't. I'd put him as tricky decision, right? Because what the
okay.
product has been on the field has been so bad. But I mean, if you want some stats, with Geno Smith and Brock Bowers at full health, the Raiders run pass plays at the highest rate in the NFL. They're the highest neutral pass rate team with Ashton Genty.
Yep.
I don't know why that's the case, but it is. And let's just start with the Raiders, right? Defensive matchups do not get better than this. Brock Bowers just had a bad performance against the Denver Broncos in a game where the ball could not stay on the field without blowing in the wind, right? Like when the center was putting down the ball, it was moving. Geno Smith had the quad bruise or whatever, right? And Bowers had one catch for 31 yards, and that was it for the game. I think this is going to be a lot closer to the performance we saw against the Jaguars. Because quite frankly, he's the primary way that the Raiders are going to move the ball in the air. Unless you think that like Tyler Lockett is going to be the wide receiver one again on the week, and I don't think so. I think this is a Brock Bowers spot. He's my tight end one overall on the week. Again, some people could argue maybe that's McBride, but I'm a Bowers guy. Ashton Genty, again, the way we've profiled this player is against really trash defensive lines in matchups. We want to start Ashton Genty. Against the real teams, like maybe the Kansas City Chiefs, we don't want to start Ashton Genty. The Cowboys' defensive line and defense is not a good team. I know that he just lost one of his guards. It's like Powers Johnson or whatever for the season.
Best lineman that was left
Best
after
lineman.
Colton Miller.
Yeah.
After Colton Miller went down, that was their best lineman.
Still starting Ashton Genty this week, but buyer beware on this, or if you have him on your roster, beware. I feel like there's going to be a couple tricky decisions and sits coming up for him, but it's not this week. And then Trey Tucker. I mean, the Raiders have dubbed him their de facto wide receiver one. They've kind of talked about, and Trey Tucker has talked about trying to carry the load as a wide receiver one for the team, right? To I guess we'll see if the Raiders were serious about that. To me, like he's more of a flex play than anything else, kind of speculative. But again, it's the
Yeah.
Dallas Cowboys. Their corners get torched all the time. I think totally possible Trey Tucker like breaks off a long catch, right? Like that one week he was like the wide receiver one overall. I think it's actually the top scoring week still was his performance against the
Yes,
Redskins, right?
he has the highest scoring wide receiver week on the season.
Yeah, and that was a bunch of deep balls against a trash secondary, right? Cowboys have a trash secondary. I think it's a very cheeky like DFS play if you want to do that. But yeah, I think he's in flex consideration this week. Then for the Cowboys, the Raiders are just really bad at football, man. Like there's Max Crosby out there, and they just got really no one else, right? So we're starting Dak, CD, and George Pickens. They were already starts every week anyways, but now this is a plus matchup as well. They're even more of starts. Javonte Williams is going to be a start as well. I don't know. He's more of an RB2 for me this week, but he's still fine. I feel like the Cowboys are going to score a lot of points here, especially indoors in a dome. It'll probably remind him of Jerry World. And then Jake Ferguson as well as the other fantasy relevant option as a start. His usage has kind of dropped off a little bit with CD Lamb being back in the picture, right? He's not needed as much, but I think he's still like a mid-range to low-end tight end start here. What do you think, man?
Nothing too exciting. CeeDee Lamb and Pickens have actually both been scoring similarly the last 2 or 3 weeks, but that's because like they both haven't been doing great. Like the offense hasn't been great. The passing offense has not been great the 2 weeks going into their bye. I'm hoping to see coming out of it a little bit more efficiency. With CD, I think it is purely a matter of his high ankle taking a toll on him. With Pickens, he's not getting that elite wide receiver one usage. He's much more of a mid-range wide receiver two with CD in there. But I'm curious to see what does it look like coming out of the bye. I think that's the most fantasy relevant or interesting piece of this. But they both were just sort of going into it like the 2 weeks before, but that was just again the offense in general was pretty down. I'm hoping they look healthier. Even Javonte Williams didn't have a great game coming out. So
All right, that's
yeah.
going to do it for us. If you made it through the whole video, thank you. Please like, subscribe, hit the bell. It helps the channel out. Question of the day for the audience. I've digged in the last couple, Yanni, so this one, I'm handing it off to you. What's our question
Oh,
for the fans?
oh God, you gotta give me a heads up when you're doing that. All right. Where does Mac Jones play quarterback next year? What team? I think a quarterback needy team is going to come get him. And I've been trying to think about this all year, and I think he's going to be fantasy relevant. Like, I think wherever he goes, you're going to see the wide receiver one there become relevant. And I've been trying to think. And then Kyler Murray, too. Like, where do you guys see the quarterback reshuffling? I saw Kyler Murray get thrown around as a Jet. I saw him get thrown around to the Panthers. I saw him, go to there. I don't know. Where would you like to see Kyler play next year, Dad? What do you think?
So for Kyler, the Panthers aren't going to get him because they've already tried out the miniature quarterback. So
Yeah.
I think
Hmm.
that Kyler would be more Jetsy to me, in that I feel like Mac Jones is going to be a Bronco. It feels like he has the cognitive ability to like kind of run the offense Sean Payton wants to run.
Actually, that's a great call. Very similar to Drew Brees, and not as big of an arm. Well, kind of, but attributes wise, very similar to Brees.
Maybe that is a hot take though, right? Because the Broncos obviously drafted Bo Nix. Like that was the whole thing. Like Sean Payton was taunting the other teams because he saw Bo Nix, and the other teams like just let him fall to him, right? But if this continues, I don't think the Broncos can continue the Bo Nix experiment, which actually really it's a bummer to me, right? As a Bo Nix sports card collector, all of his values on everything that I own are just tanking, like egregiously, but
Egregiously. I
really
think
bad.
I think depending on what Kevin O'Connell decides, Mac to the Vikings is interesting. And I think the Panthers, I could really see the Panthers that want just a stable, run the operation properly quarterback there. And I'm wondering if Mac will be their guy. So
All right, and we'll catch you guys for the gambling show on Friday.